6:02 p.m. Monday, November 26th. I'd like to call the Select Board meeting to order. First order on of business on the agenda is a public meeting to review the proposed design of the playground at the Charlottetown Beach. I'd like to introduce Rec Commissioner Bill Fraser-Harris and Recreation Director Nicole Conley. And Jordan. There we go. Self-introduction.
Yeah. He's come to advise us on the playground.
Yes. The PJs are.
Can we go, let's do the survey first. Sure, we'll do the survey first. Where do you want?
I think if you're in the second row there's a mic that can pick you up pretty clearly next to Dean.
Okay, and I can actually see from here too. I can't really talk to people, but I'll talk to you. How about that?
Sounds good.
Scroll down on that.
Hi.
Hi, Nicole asked me to scroll down on the computer.
Oh, okay. You got it, Dean?
Oh, do I do it? Yeah, awesome.
I can't talk while I'm
Julie,
sitting. Sorry, I'm going to.
I think that works. However you're most comfortable.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill, Charlotte Rec Commission Chair. The Rec Director, and we have Commissioners Bill Pence here tonight and Judy Hill. So we put a survey out on the beach, and we are just like super excited, first of all, that the town has 20 odd acres of waterfront, exceptional waterfront, and that we are given the privilege of managing it for and with the town. It's a beautiful piece of property, and going forward, we wanted to get an idea of what the town wanted, not just what the Rec Commission wanted. So we put out a survey, and this sort of started with the Select Board a couple of months ago saying, if we're going to be potentially putting some money into the beach, we'd like you to have a plan going forward, and maybe even engage a landscape architect, a master plan, shall we say. So with that in mind, Nicole and I visited 4 landscape architects and designers, and have got basically proposals from 3 of them at the moment, and we're waiting on one. The local distinctive Charlie Prout is going to make a presentation to us as well. The first thing all of them said was, we'll find out what your town wants, and with this particular resource. And they were all, to a T, 100% excited about the possibility of having, 22 acres of waterfront property at their design disposal. But they said, if you guys do the survey, you'll save several $1,000s. So that's what we did. So what I'd like to do is, and it's really kind of interesting what the results were. And first of all, to give you some of the numbers, we got, as of today, 202 results, I think is what, it says it somewhere.
Answer 202.
Where is it? Thank you. Yes, 202. And it's coming out in Front Porch Forum again today, so there'll probably be some more. But we're going to close it, I think, as of today, tomorrow, sometime. So if we just scroll through, if you have any questions while we're going along, please. What I want to do is just go through the questions fairly quickly, how they were answered, and then kind of give what I would consider to be my interpretation of the results. But if you have a question along the way, please let us know. So it's kind of interesting. And I think, do you guys all have copies of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
So it's a little different now. I think it might be a little easier to understand the display method that I've used, because all the numbers are now on the graphs, and so it's a little easier than what you have there.
Oh, yeah.
It's not different, it's just a little different display. So demographics, we can scroll down as well. You can just see pretty well spread
Oh, you want to?
Yeah, no, just stop right there, yeah. Again, you can see a fairly, of the people that do have children, a fairly even spread. Keep going.
How many people have children?
Looks like half.
Yeah, 40, 50, yeah, just a little less than half. So 40% or 47%. Utilize the beach. So this is fairly telling of why people are coming to the beach. And you'll notice,
Could you just read the question for everybody?
oh, sorry. Have you or anyone in your household utilized any of the recreational facilities listed below? So across the bottom is the facilities, and then the answers are graphically displayed. Obviously, the town beach itself is the priority. The playground is second with, this is usage, with tennis and pickleball coming in third. And then, of course, the ice rink, sorry, go ahead.
These aren't mutually exclusive, so 52% of the people use the playground, but since 97% use the beach, they're also using the beach and the playground.
Was it all, yes, it was all that apply.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's an all that apply question.
So you might not have put it on the playground, but you might put the beach and
Right.
Scroll.
Okay, yep, keep going. And ask questions as we go. So how often do you visit the beach during the summer? Pretty even across, 1 to 2 times a week is probably the most popular there at 31%. But that's a significant amount. And then you see the 3+ times a week is also quite high. Go ahead. These are the individual responses where you fill in the blank as to what you would like to see. So if you visit the beach once a month, what types of activities could we add to increase your visits? And this is what I will, I mean, these are all comments, and these are what I will summarize for you at the end. Let's just go through the survey.
Just so Selectboard members know, they did get copies of those comments on the.
Yes. And I think you have copies of the comments
Yes.
as well. There's probably, if there are 200 people in the survey, you probably, not everybody had comments, you probably have maybe 100 comments. How often do you or anyone in your household participate in any of the recreational activities at the beach? So, again, sometimes it's not a particularly great question, but it's it'll show you that meh, move on. It's not a great question. I don't like it.
you don't know if they're plans or.
Yeah. So this is very telling, I think. What brings you to the beach? And quite a significant, and again, this display is probably going to be easier for you to read than what you have in front of you because the numbers are actually on there. So what brings you to the beach? Can you scroll up just a little bit, Judy, to see the rest of the answers?
Scroll down.
Scroll down, there we go. Well, we won't quite get it all on, maybe. But, so relax. Takes the cake with swimming. Closely followed by time with family and friends. And this will play into, but again, see some of the numbers there for sightseeing. People just, 30% of the people responded with, I just go down for sightseeing.
What's the last one?
Up a little bit, Judy.
Water
sports. And so you can see, again, I'll get to my summary in a minute. You can see events like the Mozart concerts and beach party, 40%. You bring your children down there, about 40%. Again, look at the activities. The actual participation in sports as such is kind of limited. It's on the lower end, unless it has to do with the lake and be swimming.
In some cases, I think it would have been better to pick one instead of all that apply. in some cases. It just seems like, I mean, because as Matt said, your numbers kind of flow. I mean, somebody, you know, the people that pick volleyball might have all gone swimming or all gone this, you know, or done plenty of these things. But I'm trying to figure out, you know, it doesn't really give you an idea of, for me, what the most somebody would do down there.
But people come down for multiple reasons, too.
Right. Well, I understand that. I'm just saying it just looks like it's, I'm just wondering why the answer couldn't, why it couldn't have been one answer along with the multiple answer, I guess.
I think if we put one answer, it would have been, I don't know. I'm not a statistician. This was, so I can't answer that for you.
I think it's been more accurate that people go down there for different reasons. And to say they just go down there for, you know, the beach isn't quite accurate because they also go down there, you know, to do something else. So I think having the multiple answers, I think, is accurate in
I
terms
think it shows the trend, Frank. What we're looking for is trends and kind of the fact that it's 30% go for sightseeing and 62%, the number of people, the number of responses there, the numbers are there. So you can actually see how many responded to that question.
I think also if you just ask for one answer, ideally you might list all those and it'd be like 40. So I see where you're coming from, but we didn't know how to list the reasons why everybody goes there. So you can make it open-ended where you just write the answer in, but then we'd have to count those up and present them in a form like this anyway. So it's hard to get at what you're getting. I hear you, but it's hard to get it.
Again, as everybody will tell you, a survey is only as good as the questions you ask and the way you ask the questions.
Well, and who answers.
Correct. But again, we're looking for trends and not. Okay, you want to carry on now, Judy?
I think later on we did an opposite open-ended.
Yeah, and there's a lot in the fine print, Frank, of the actual verbal answers that people gave that will maybe delineate better what you're looking for. Community events. Significant number wish to have community events down there. I think the Mozart concerts and the beach party are what they're talking about, the community events. You could also consider what we as a rec commission are talking about doing down there. Actually, no, they're not community events, but more, shall we say, weddings or graduation parties, catering to groups. Again, those would be fee-based. Carry on. So how do you rate the appearance of the beach? You can look at the numbers there. A strong predominance of good, leaning towards fair. Room for improvement, absolutely. So that's the beach and its facilities. I think the fact that the tennis courts need repair and the playground is definitely outdated fall into some of those reasons right there. You can carry on through that down to the next graph because that's the specific answers. So that I think is referring to the wetland.
Yeah, and I wanted to see what they said. I didn't know if they were saying they would fill it or something like that.
Well, I'll tell you, Robin, one of the things that somebody did say, and this is just one of the designers that we went to said, I said, well, we've got a wetland there, so we're kind of really restricted, you know, for 3 or 4 acres of that as a wetland. And they said, wetland? Put a boardwalk through it. Make some displays of what's in there, you know. And apparently, boardwalks through wetlands nowadays are like.
Big thing, yes, of course.
Pardon?
The beavers love it too.
Right. So anyway, but that's a way of looking at something that we as in recreation hadn't really considered. So we considered the wetland as like taboo, no go, whereas a lot of people are now considering wetlands as opportunities, even though they're restrictive, but an opportunity for education or recreation.
Yeah.
So cleanliness of the facilities, we're happy with good to fair. Our entire budget for beach maintenance in a season is about $3,000, and we have rarely spent anywhere close to that. So we have always we're trying to err on the side of if it's clean and usable, we keep it. And I'm talking about toilets and changing facilities, etc. Let us know the quality of the facilities. Again, fair, again, representative of what we are trying to present. In other words, not brand new stuff every year, keeping the costs as low as we possibly can. The theory being clean versus brand new. And then please let us know how likely you are to utilize any of the items listed below. And that is probably a better frame of reference to look at that if you can see it. So unlikely is in the blue. I'll just kind of, unlikely are these items, and you can sort of see them. Sometimes it's the yellow, likely is the light blue, very likely is the orange. Again, sort of trending to that previous question where you see the dock and the waterfront usage. Restrooms rank highly in the usage. Picnic barbecue area, highly. Playground, highly. Open space, highly. And in fact, open space has a lot of likely, very likelies.
Bill, this was Charlotte residents responding?
Correct.
Okay.
It was only in the Charlotte News, and it was only sent out on Front Porch Forum to Charlotte residents. So I ticked the box that said, don't send it to any other towns. Now, I can't be sure whether somebody's coming here and filling out our surveys.
Is this a good time to make a suggestion about survey?
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, Robert, this is not your moment. How do you tell them no?
Yeah.
How do you say no? So anyway, cancel, whatever.
All right, Robin, we're going to just, can you hold your question till the end?
Yeah, sure.
Because we'll just go through the results and
It's
then
actually a suggestion, no.
a suggestion about what I'm doing right now or the
No,
survey in general? Okay,
yeah.
carry on. Are there any other additions that we have not listed? Okay, so again, this is what we've asked people for in the comments section. And it goes from everything to a giant slide that goes from, the road down to the water. A lot of people were saying sand. They actually want a beach that is sand. And so I'm happy to make these comments available on an as-needed basis to people. I'm not going to publish, I don't know how to publish all 100 of them, or however many there actually are. But a lot of and what we in the Rec Commission are going to do is go through them and kind of parse them out as to what they're saying. Carry on. And then funding, what do people, and this is fairly self-fulfilling. People, again, the definite supporter of, and then the way we would fund things, user fees, fundraising, grants, bonds, private donations. And everybody loves grants, everybody loves private donations. Bonding, that got a kind of an interesting mix. And then user fees, again, these are like the fees that we charge at the beach for parking. The only fee we charge at the moment is for parking. We have a differentiated user fee for residents versus non-residents. It's twice as much for non-residents. A few people who filled out the survey didn't know that and suggested we do that, but we do that already.
Do you want to look at any of these?
No, you carry on. I think the graphs are fairly, unless anybody has specific questions. on that. Park accessibility, we are leaning towards, with our playground and the park itself, making it more accessible. And Matt's wife, Julia came to one of our meetings, and she's been responsible for the playground at, development of the playground at Oak Ledge Park in Burlington, which is a full accessibility playground, and has a budget of $500,000. And she came to us, so I think what we want to try and do is incorporate as much as we can, based on affordability and et cetera, as much as we can ongoing for accessibility. And that also goes to the beach itself, because we have an area of the beach to the south which is very close to level with the water near the bridge. And that area could be made more accessible for people with accessibility issues to actually get onto the beach. And so that is something that I think we'll probably consider quite strongly. And then the playground, for those of you who don't know, we do have a fairly significant donation that has been made or promised for the playground. And so we're moving ahead as quickly as we can with plans for the playground in the same location that it is now. So that's basically the survey. Go ahead.
The number of respondents, what percentage of the users of the Charlotte residents is that? In other words, do you have a sense of people that come and use the park, and how many of those people responded?
Nicole, do you have a number of, like, are you talking of residents versus non-residents?
Yeah, just residents right now.
How many? So
The respondents represents what percentage of the Charlotters that use the beach?
of the Charlotters that use the beach, I don't know. Of Charlotters, I can tell you that it's about just over 10% of
Respondents.
households. I think there's like 3,700 people.
Might be like 5,
So if you
6%.
Right.
How many
But how many,
stickers did you
that's
say?
what I was wondering. Yeah. How many stickers do we
stickers?
sell?
The stickers went
Eight.
up because some of them are like season, some of them are non-residents and some of them are resident passes.
Yeah.
So,
That's
we
not-
about 8, we're almost up to 1,000 this year, both residents and
well,
non-residents.
Wow.
that's like 400 or a little more. I think we've had about 600 and something, which was,
And that represents a family, too, oftentimes.
It's one car.
Right.
right, because it can be like 3 for a family, could get 3 stickers, or, if they had 3 cars. Or,
One car with as many people as, it's per car, the stickers are per car.
But each family probably does get at least
more
2
than
stickers.
one. Yeah, at least, usually,
Yeah.
I think, still. There's a reduced price, right, for the second stickers that you have?
What's the price go down to for the second sticker?
$5.
Five.
Yeah, $5. So it's $20 for a resident now, the second one is $5.
Okay,
Sorry, did I answer that roughly?
Yeah, I mean, the follow-up question too is, do you have any census for non-residents and residents utilizing?
Nicole, do you have a number for approximately how many resident and non-resident passes we sold?
I can get that number, but I just know that we usually sell around 800, so.
Okay, but approximately off the top of your head?
I mean, the majority of them, so I would say 80% of them are residents.
80% resident approximately?
Most of
Right.
them don't pay the $40.
But we're not, don't quote us on that, so.
And that doesn't, so we're not counting the day users, people that come in.
That's correct, that's their cash.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have some sense of those numbers if that,
If you want the exact numbers, Nicole has them,
okay,
of what they were this year
right, okay, good.
and last year.
in terms of, like, the survey, the thing that, for me, seems that the best way of doing a survey about a place like that is to actually have the survey down there in the summer, and you solicit people when they're coming in, and people that you know are there using the beach, and say, would you mind filling this out for me, or making a comment, and they're simpler, not so many questions. And it goes on for the whole summer.
Okay, thank you.
you know, like personally, not that I think this is all terrible, because I think it's interesting. You know, but it does limit that only people that go online, only the people that look at Front Porch Forum, only the people that really have access to a computer, you know, and know kind of how to do that, and it isn't everybody.
Right, okay, thanks. Any other questions? So if I might just take a moment to summarize what I think we're hearing here, and it's somewhat different to what I initially thought would happen with the town. Although after 15 years or so of kind of sensing what's going on with recreation in town, it doesn't surprise me that much. And that is that the overall sense is that we don't want to change too much. That what we do have there is an amazing resource, and we don't want to, I think in Bud's words, make it like Coney Island. And I think that's, I'm sort of using that a bit facetiously, but it's what most of the comments are that they like it sort of the way it is. It's, however, the facilities that we do have, if you remember the survey, they're okay. You know, the bathrooms are okay, the tennis courts need some work. But the general trend is like they don't want ball fields. We as Charlotters are very busy with our lives right now. We have our children. They are all they're in programs. If they're in one of Nicole's recreation programs, they are already fully booked. And what people are generally going to the beach for is to get away from that. They're going down there with their family on the weekends to picnic, relax, and kind of get away from their normal day-to-day stuff. So what I'm sensing is that I don't think we need to put a whole lot more facilities down there. I think and for instance, the ball field, I'll highlight the ball field, which has been there and now since Little League has moved, is totally underutilized. And if you saw from the survey results, nobody uses the ball field anymore. So that's kind of an area which we could resource into something if the opportunity arose. People have talked maybe about a pavilion up there for graduation parties, etc. That's been put out there. One of the companies that we went to suggested the boardwalk through the wetland. Everybody pretty much said we need to upgrade the playground. And like I said, we've got a $40,000 donation to do that. So we're getting quotes now.
The tennis courts.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
I wrote the last grant for the tennis courts, and that was a while ago.
Right. And unfortunately, the tennis courts, no offense, were built in the wrong place. The tennis courts.
I didn't build them,
I know. The
but
tennis courts-
we did put a curtain drain in that
Right,
house.
and so what we need to do is go with what we have and make what we have better, and it'll happen. So we talked about moving the tennis courts, for instance, moving them up to where the ball field is, because that would be a perfect place for tennis courts because it's dry, and the whole curtain drain thing would be less applicable there because water is what's destroying our tennis courts. So,
There was it looked like a lot of the specific feedback people put comments in related to really enjoying the uptick in the music and the live events.
yeah, yeah.
So that was
I think the word community, and it's kind of overused, but community is what the beach represents to Charlotte, and using it with non-exclusivity is one of the huge things that we've been working with the Rec Commission. If we have a party down there or an event, it is never exclusive for anybody or any one group. So. Hi.
Hi. Louise McCarran, and I always have to defend myself at these meetings, but I've lived here for 45 years, and I have 3 beach issues for you. Oh, and also, twice a day I go by the beach into town and back out. And, oh, let me step back. I want to thank you so very, very, very much for the hard work you and your committee do.
Thank you.
It's really fantastic. So I have three issues. I'll kind of do them in
Would you like
reverse.
me to address each one if I could,
No.
or just hear them?
However
Okay,
you'd like to do
okay.
it. One, I have a concern about the care of the St. George Memorial, and I would volunteer to help do that. I bring flowers there from time to time. But that, it seems to be kind of neglected. That's kind of, okay.
Is that the same as the Giftness Memorial,
No, it's that little kind of stone.
the stone, the veterans? Is it Veterans Memorial?
Well, it's
Sorry,
really for St. George,
St. George, okay.
because he died in the Vietnam War.
Well, yeah, oh, yes,
Is it the
yes.
same?
It's the same thing, the
Yeah, I
Giftness,
think
the
so.
St.
There's
George,
a
Dick St. George,
connection.
that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yes, yes.
Sorry, yeah. Okay,
I
so
have an
That
answer for you for that.
stone there.
I do have an answer for you,
And I'm,
but go
and
ahead.
I'm very willing to help on that one. Okay, the second one is, it's really hard to get a canoe or a kayak into the water. And I don't know if there's any great, way to fix that, but that's kind of just what it is, right?
Well, no, I'm going to answer that one.
Yeah.
Did I mention that earlier? You remember by the bridge?
Well, you said something about by the bridge.
By the bridge, I think we're strongly advocating some sort of a ramp and accessibility for
We've been
kayaks,
after that
subs.
for a long time.
Right.
That was,
So,
Well, but
Pass.
you can actually, if it's light enough, you just take it down the stairs.
yeah, but I understand what you're saying, and you can't do that with a wheelchair. So,
Well, exactly.
We're
Okay, so here's my third issue, and it is really the most important one. And again, I go by there twice a day because I live on Popple Dungeon, and that's how I go into town. I'm very, very concerned about traffic, and I'm really concerned about children and bikes and the bridge. And we shouldn't change the bridge. And I've been thinking about what could we do, if anything. But many times I'll go through there and I way slow down. But I'm always concerned about little kids darting across in the summer, and I'm concerned about bikes coming through the bridge. Now, I don't have any answer for this, okay, at all. But as someone who goes by a lot, those things concern me. And I don't know, and the other thing is, many times, that may be an exaggeration, there'll be folks camped out kind of in the bridge, or bikers who put their bike in the bridge, and maybe it's just a sign or something. I have no solution for you, other than as someone who goes by there a lot. Yeah. That concerns me. And I slow way down. I usually go about 10 miles an hour going through there, because I'm terrified about that. So those are my three things.
okay. So the first one, Jeff Gickness, by the way, that's why is now on the Rec Commission.
Okay.
And we are working with him. He is working with us
Yeah.
because the St. George Memorial is his grandfather, is it, or somebody help me.
No,
with
he
it.
died, he's exactly my age, and he died when he was 21 years old. So he may be.
But well, he's related to
The St. George's,
Laura
yeah.
St. George's.
Huh?
Laura St. George's, his
Brother.
mother.
His mother,
Oh.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay, so yes, so Jeff is on the commission. We're aware of that, and we're going to do something about it. We're thinking of like a flagpole with a label on it or
Well,
something.
and I'm also willing to help on that.
Okay, great,
Okay.
good. Thank you,
And you
Louise.
got the access one?
Yes.
You've already addressed
Yep.
that. The
And the
traffic one,
traffic.
I just really don't have any suggestions, but more than once, I've been coming south on that road, only to confront massive bikers. Or, it's just, I don't know what to do, because we're not gonna change the bridge.
You could probably put a sign in there, no loitering
No, loitering,
Inside
right,
the
and that'll go a
bridge.
long way.
you know?
are they in
That'll make us
the
really
bridge?
friendly. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they're in the bridge, and I'm sorry, I
They
don't,
stop and look around. I don't know, I just had an idea while you were talking about it, like, of somehow figuring out how to put little, like, bike monitors or something.
well, I don't want to change it. It's like what everyone said, let's not change this, because it's a gem and we love it. It's just that, and of course, if you go through the bridge, anyone's on the other side, you of course stop and signal some way. But, if we're gonna make it more accessible by the bridge. It just raised this, and there's no right answer to it. And maybe there is no answer to it, okay?
Right.
So, again, thank you for all your hard work. It's well appreciated.
Thanks.
And I know I don't play on those tennis courts because they suck. Okay, just saying.
They're great. Play crack.
Are you presenting some of the information from the landscape architects?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
look forward to that.
All right, oops, I should have waited then.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
So, any other questions on what we've just talked about, the survey? And then I'm not, so we've got the 3 proposals from, thank you, Bud, from the landscape architects, and also Charlie Prout from Distinctive is basically saying he can do it for $85 an hour, and then we tell him what we want him to do. And we've been given a budget so far for the plan of $2,000 by the Selectboard. So basically, Charlie comes in at like 24 hours or whatever of labor at our discretion. The others work on a much more regimented format, shall we say. They're like the bigger names in Burlington, SE Group. I have all 3 proposals. If after the meeting anybody wants to look at them in detail, they are welcome to it. They are not drawings of our beach with, with a plan at this point, because we just, I mean, they for $2,000, they will come up with something, but until we're sure of the fact that we want to go with a plan based on this information, maybe we don't need a plan. Maybe we can say, okay, we've got the location of what we're doing. Maybe we need a parking plan, maybe. But these are questions, and I don't have the answers. But if we want to go with one of the larger groups in Burlington, one of the landscape architects, to see us through to a full master plan is in the region of $10,000 to $15,000, $10,000. Go ahead, Peter.
I guess I would just say, I think the survey was, kind of takes away what some of that cost would have been. So you performed, as volunteers and with Nicole, what would have cost the town several $1,000s as part of that master planning process. And I think the results of the survey indicate, maybe a full-blown, multi-pronged master plan as would be done in the city of Burlington isn't needed. But I would say I think you shouldn't necessarily say that no planning is needed, because it seems that there are some components, as you said, and some of those proposals I think could be tailored. I mean, they gave you a price for what would be a master plan process, and maybe a couple of tiers. But you could probably, if we, as a result of the survey, said, well, we don't want a full master plan. We want a plan for the playground this year. You could probably get them on a per hour basis, and with their, I think, in looking at their experience, several of them have had recreation planning experience, which I think is pretty exciting to get that kind of skill applied to this town facility.
Absolutely. And again, we come back to this. We have 20 plus acres of prime real estate, and each one of these landscape I mean, the definition of an architect really, they want to build something, they want to do something. I think maybe, I'm not sure we need a landscape architect to design our playground. We need a playground architect, because we've sort of got the boundaries defined. However, each one of the architects that we met with, they dropped ideas out of their head that we would never have thought of, and so I do think that enlisting some professional advice is going to go a long way. Do you know how to pull up Google Earth? For instance, one of them was parking. That's one of the things that we talked about, because we've limited the upper access parking area for reasons of scofflaws and people parking there and not wishing to pay the $2 or the $20 service fee. So we blocked off this parking area. And so now our revenue that we're generating down here is significantly more, not only from beach visits, but we're getting pretty much 100% of people who park here, we're getting their revenue. And there's, they're not parking up there anymore. In the summer, it used to be 10 or 15 cars, parked up there, and then people would walk across. But what we're talking about now is this parking area. And one of the architects said, well, this is prime real estate. Why don't you get rid of your parking here and maybe move it over here? And then walk through your prime real estate beach area from your parking area. Don't take up, a third of your prime real estate with cars. So that was, one idea. Another one said, make sure this is a wetland. And I'm like, well, yeah, we can't do anything with the wetland. And he said, well, of course you can. And I'm like, really? You can? And he said, yes, you can put, the grants are very forthcoming for boardwalks, like a walking boardwalk through to the other side. This whole area has now been cleared of brush and is like a beautiful woodland now. And you can see through from the tennis courts all the way through. So each one of them had some really kind of interesting ideas. How about a walking path around the whole property? We've already got disc golf around most of it. There's this is now almost like 1/3 of it has a beautiful walking path around it. Well, it all does actually. But why not a delineated walking path? Another big question was raised by a lot of people was dogs. So, we can certainly discuss that at some length in the future. Maybe somebody wanted a designated dog area down here, right next to the handicap accessible launch. But, Judy.
Yeah, it seems like a bunch of people getting together for some brainstorming sessions might be good, even on site. But it occurs to me that what would be really pivotal is is to figure out what's going on with all that square footage around the ball diamond. In other words,
Up here?
Yeah, that's a huge amount of area, and right now it's not being utilized.
I spent many happy, freezing cold afternoons on that ballpark.
Playing,
No, not me, watching.
oh, watching, okay, yeah.
So,
Well, it's now Little Leagues at the Berry Farm. So,
well, that's,
yeah. So,
okay.
Judy?
Can you tell me what the difference is between the red line and the blue line?
It's an old property line.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's fine.
Yeah. These used to be 2 parcels, and it's now designated. It's an old property line, but doesn't exist anymore.
So what's the blue line? That's-
The
Street.
blue line is
Yeah.
the river? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the river.
Okay.
Which does, ebb and flow and change that part there and change from the inside. It's sometimes very full and then it kind of seems more like there's room to move around. One thing I think would be interesting, you're talking about what we have now and how to move ahead with it. And of course, we can all come up with many different things. And if your survey did seem to indicate that people were like, keep it kind of cool, don't go and do a whole bunch of extra stuff. But I think sometimes it would be really interesting to find out, looking back a little bit, it was a gift, make this more known to people. It was a gift from the, Larsons who owned the Hills Point. Let's not forget the history about it. And then FEMA filled, that would be all wetland right where the parking lot is too. He says prime real estate. It's not really prime real estate because that's fill.
Well, Robin, I'll tell you what, if you want to, can you write something up for us of history?
Yeah, I could work
Because
on that,
all we have is left on the commission right now is Craig, and honestly, his memory's kind of, so
Well, the
if
thing
you
is
could,
that it is an interesting thing because there's...
if you could write that up for us, and we would be happy to publish it in with our...
Yeah, and make sure people are aware of some of those things because that's what drives, the whole idea that it stays
Sure.
open to the public, because
Why don't I-
that
can
was
I-
a stipulation. It's not, you can't close it and say,
Would you-
this is just for Charlotte.
Would you write this up for me and I'll put it in the town report this year from Recreation? Can you do that, like a paragraph?
Well, yeah, I'll look and see how I can deal with it. It's a lot of information in a way when you start digging in there, because it plays off
Okay,
onto what we can do and can't do.
Right.
Like concessions, things that haven't happened there, because supposedly,
right,
back in history, those were caveats, those that said no.
right. Well,
Can't-
Mary's done a lot of research and has not found anything with the state to that effect.
About it, or
Right,
FEMA.
right,
I thought the stipulations came from FEMA.
right. So, any other questions? If you write something up, I'll put it in this year's.
Well, yeah, we can look and try to
Okay,
figure it out.
thank you.
As a
Yes.
comment, I was one of the instigators, I think, of saying, we need a plan if you're going to spend this much money. So I think what you were talking about with someone, what I envisioned was someone who could take like this map, like Charlie Prout perhaps, and just show everybody what it is just in this view, and then maybe some overlays, like some people thought, the parking makes absolute sense to me. I mean, people pay for the waterfront. Why put cars on the waterfront and then have an unused baseball diamond? A little section where there's a trail and a historical thing that tells why we have a park. I think that we don't necessarily, and your survey backs up the fact that we don't really want to pay someone to tell us what we need to do at the beach. I think the most people that are interested in the town can, just a few comments that came up here, have an overlay, maybe another meeting. And I think we can develop that and have somebody like Charlie help us pictorially display it. And I'd vote if I was spending money to go with that, with Charlie Prout's approach. Just simple, a few hours, start with a Google map, make a big plan, and then say, these are some people's ideas. Have
Right.
overlays is the popular way of doing stuff.
Right.
Say, this is an overlay where now the parking lot is here.
Right.
So people can see it. That was part of my point, was that people have to, to spend money on a bond and not be able to visualize it in a picture is hard to do.
But, Robin, then we'll wrap it up.
Maybe, I don't know who the three that you've received proposals from, but, maybe they would, facilitate a design charrette.
A what?
A design charrette where people get together and.
Oh, yes, they do that. They all three of them mentioned that.
The town party. So.
Hold on, let me just answer that question, Rob. All three of them said that they would do that. Now, we would pay several $1,000s to have them do that.
And they bring pizza too.
Yeah. Sorry,
No.
go ahead.
I would really like to see information gathered on site by users at the moment when they're there using, at the park at Kingsland Bay, we just have these comment cards. Well, nobody fills them out unless we ask them to, and just say, could you please fill this out? And so you train your staff next summer, you say, we're getting at least 500 of these things, and there are only 3 questions necessarily. You can give some other, background or have a little thing, hey, this is what we're thinking about, this is what we did this other survey on the internet last year, and this year we want to get on the ground.
Okay.
And then that way it only says, why are you here today? Tennis, beach, picnic. How often do you usually come? Once a summer because I get invited, no, or every week, or as often as I can,
Right.
just the different answers that you get when people are right there. It's just different than,
Okay,
I'll help with that if you want,
okay.
if you're gonna do it.
All right. Any other questions? So where do we go from here, the select board?
I just have one
Oh, sorry, go
observation.
ahead.
It is really fun and wonderful to drive by there in the summer and see all the young people out swimming and doing bad things to their bodies by exposing them to too much sun. It's a delight, and so I just want to say.
Well, if I'll summarize and say anything, we have to recognize that we have, one of the things that I say, we are the commission of fun. And we have 22 acres of fun down here. And it's 22 acres of just like magnificent opportunity just to use it and be there. So if we do nothing and just use it, it's win. We won. You know, it's great. But I think we can use it and to better further the recreational opportunities in Charlotte. I think we can do better. So where do we go from here, guys?
If you're asking me, I'd take the results of your survey, sit down with Charlie, spend a few hours creating a plan and maybe some overlays or sections showing where some of the ideas, what would it look like if we use some of the people's ideas? You
Okay.
know, everybody wants to go swimming. Well, let's try to enhance the swimming experience a little bit. Make the access, like you said, change the parking.
Yeah. Yeah, this, if we move the parking, Fritz, I mean, this is just to remove, we got 3 quotes to remove this section. So I'll just briefly, we have a double parking here. It's the only area of double parking. This is all pretty much single nose-in parking, the rest of it. To increase this all to double parking, which would be fairly easy to do, would be about $9,000. So we would sort of double the parking in this area, which would be about another, if we take it all the way around, then we'd have nose-in parking on all the way around, would again be about $9,000 and increase your parking by about 25 spaces. So that's if we do it there. The reason we're now holding off is because if enough people, and say we get a quote to put a parking lot up here or even up here, you know, it's going to be more money, but do we want to do that, or you know, and then have everybody walk across? Or do we put parking here, or do we just leave it here and expand it a little bit?
Whenever I've been down there, people are piled in that area. And the ball field is empty.
Sorry?
And the ball field is empty. People come to see the lake, not to
Right.
run around on a ball field.
Right.
It's not always true.
Handicap parking you need some parking there, because if you're gonna have an access area, you would need to have some parking close to that.
Right. We have handicap parking here now, and this area, you know, could be pick up and drop off, you know, if we were going to close this area off. But maybe for $10,000, this would last us another, you know, five years or so.
So here you have one of your overlays, parking plan A, moving it to the ball field, parking plan B, making it here.
And a cost.
Then
with
you've
that
got
overlay.
a map, you can draw the pictures, square footage, call a contractor, say I want to do 10,000 square feet of gravel. You can get some budget numbers.
Yeah. $250 a square foot for parking. $260.
On the other hand, some limited parking is probably not bad either, because that helps keep the usage from blowing over.
Carrie, I think you had an important comment just now.
Oh, I would think that the ball field is too far of a walk to the beach. You know,
For-
back and forth.
Yeah,
You know,
you know, if you're having kids, everybody park up there, and you're trying to bring kids all the way across
Yeah.
here.
It's way too
Right.
hot back and forth.
Yeah, that's why it's better the people who don't want to pay or don't have the money. I mean, when I was down there, it was like, people came and you could tell there were some jerks that didn't pay, but most of them were like, they show up and they just didn't have the money, and you're like, okay, we'll go to the ball field. And it was okay, because it's like my line that I gave to everyone is, if somebody's a liar, that's their problem.
I happen to disagree with you with regards to
I
this.
see that, because there's a gate across the thing, which I happen to think is a terrible
Right.
thing to do.
Right.
And I'd rather have 10 people every 300 who fudge in there some way. People can walk in. So, you know, or some poor guy that showed up and he's like, oh, you know, and they're looking for quarters, and you're like, just go park in the ball.
Again,
That's a management stuff.
Is it user fee or, are we user fee based or not, And are we interested in revenue stream for the town? Are we interested in revenue?
Well, yeah, but you don't charge people who bike through. They get to come and swim and hang out and be there. And people who walk from around that's fine too. I mean, to me, there's got to be some offset fee for sure, no doubt. And if it makes more than what you need, great. You can use it for something. But, we do pay taxes for it.
Do people that ride their bikes, they don't have to pay?
No.
Oh, I see.
Motorcycles pay the same though.
Parking and
What-
bike parking.
what
Parking
is-
only is the fee.
When is the next regularly scheduled rec commission meeting?
It would be the first Tuesday of December, second Tuesday of December.
The 11th? So one idea is to give the rec commission time to kind of process this presentation and process these results as a commission. We could come in a little earlier on the December 17th select board meeting and have a mini charrette that is free. We could invite Charlie Prout to come down or even hire him on an hourly basis and invite the public to come to that charrette and have like a 1 hour work session with the rec commissioners and the select board and kind of talk about some of the possible overlays. Some of them preclude each other. If parking lot is in A, tennis court can't be moved to a higher ground. If the parking lot ends up being moved close to the ball field, can the tennis court be there also? So we could kind of look at 2 or 3 different concept plans. I think on the shorter term, the thing that kind of fast-tracked this was the budget discussion allocation for a concept design for the playground, which was a much smaller piece of the design, and we could use that opportunity to kind of flesh that out a little more with a landscape architect like Charlie. It seems like to me, and sounds like Fritz too, he'd be the most cost-effective, and also being a community member, it seems like it'd be nice to draw from our local resources. Is that something?
Yeah, I would, maybe, we might want to put it off till January or
Or June.
I'm not sure that we'll, all right, let's do December. If you think,
Well, I just think we lose momentum, but it's
Yeah,
also
no.
a very busy season for us with the budget.
I'm hopeful that we have a response. I've publicized this meeting in probably 8 front porch forum posts, and we get maybe 5 or 6 people.
You had no
So-
idea it would be such crummy weather.
I don't think
Nobody
weather
wanna
kept.
come out.
I don't think weather kept them on. Hi.
Hey, did you collect it? I can't remember if you collected our information when we answered the survey about reaching back out to folks. Did you ask for email addresses?
No.
Okay.
Survey is anonymous.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically impossible to get to one of these if you're a family with kids. And almost all the folks I know who answered these surveys were people in a similar place to I am, parents with young kids who use the beach quite a bit. So it's really hard to come and have a conversation about it. I'd be really interested to know how we could participate in a different way. I'm just getting really lucky right now, being able to sit here. But I'd really like to know or be able to engage in a series of steps about what work happens down at the beach.
Maybe the next recreation commission meeting, you could get your contact information and let you know when that's going to happen. And
Yeah, I'd be interested in it personally, but I'm also just wondering if, for the folks who did see your post on Front Porch Forum, that's how I know for most of the folks who answered this, how they saw it, to just say again, if you did this and you want to be on a list to get some kind of update or some kind of invite in, just send over some contact information just to stay posted. It's just
that they don't have to come here to get that information.
right, because it can be really challenging, and I'm actually really happy and surprised by the number of responses you got. I didn't think that would be the number. That seems like a great
Significant.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. So there are folks out there who want to know.
Yeah.
You were going to provide the results perhaps on Front Porch? Or?
I was going to do a kind of a summary, I think providing, we could close the the survey and then just make it accessible to everybody. You can't change the results, but you know, you could look, everybody could then look at the survey if they wanted to. Or we could just publicize the results in more general terms, like I've sort of summarized for you. I think probably summary is probably better.
So in looking at, we have 2 draft agendas, which look pretty full. Is there interest/ability for people to come in, I'd say around 5 p.m. on December 17th? We have a 6 o'clock proposed library edition. It kind of stretches the length of the meeting quite a bit.
Maybe to keep the momentum, we let the rec commission meet
With Charlie.
and post results of the survey with maybe a sketch. And then, so just meet with the rec commission, and the next step for you is to post, instead of, you know, the same way you did the survey, post the results of it. The summaries, maybe some way of an online map of something like that. I mean, I don't know how many people at the park, that use the park, actually know where the borders are, where the perimeter of the park is. I mean, that might be the next step to keep you out of trying to meet right before Christmas, but to get the information out here. This is the results of our survey.
Yeah.
Most people wanted this, most people wanted that. Kind of your presentation tonight in more of a digital form that you would put on Front Porch Forum.
Right.
Is there a hurry for some reason? Is there a hurry to get like the $40,000, or is there some reason why you don't seem to be interested in gathering information and putting information in front of people when they're at the beach next summer?
Well, one of the flaws I see in your reasoning is that you're gonna ask the town to pay for a lot of this. And if you're gonna ask the people that use it to pay for it, you're gonna get all of the gung-ho answers.
Well, the
So
people
by
that-
having
but
it-
a lot of them might not want to spend money. They might be down there and they might say, hey, you know, I love this place just the way it is, I don't want to. But that, you can have all center along, and especially if you have your little booth, you can have a map that shows the property line so that anybody who wants to do a display, and then everyone who's down there, hey, did you see it yet? You know, stop in, have a look, you know.
Yeah, have a
That
presentation.
would get people there that come to use the beach.
Have a
They don't
presentation
to go-
at the beach, so they could see it.
Right.
That makes-
But
no, I don't
means
think
you
there's a
can't rush
hurry,
and
is there?
You can't keep
No.
whatever this frontline porch forum momentum is. Like, that's one momentum, but it doesn't encompass other
The-
elements of beach use.
The concept design for a future of usage of the entire park, I think there's no rush. I haven't seen any. There is a desire and a need to update the playground. I know I was there and took a couple of days for my hands to get unstained from the reused shredded tires.
Those are good.
You know, which is just, it's actually not healthy what's in those tires and leaching into people's skin.
And, like,
But it's
wood
old.
chips over it, but it doesn't help, they still come.
So the playground, there is an impetus to have some type of concept design where a playground can get constructed next year. But I think with the grand design of the park, there is no rush. And the more community involvement, I think, brings more community support.
Right, I just a little hesitant to like jump onto a playground remake if it includes having to do all these other ideas.
It's not. The donor has taken this on based upon the fact that it has a beginning and an end. It's pretty clear. The tennis courts do not. He initially wanted to fix the tennis courts and build us pickleball courts, and I showed him the engineering issues involved with that, and he would prefer to donate at this time to the playground.
But has anybody been looking at trying to get some money for the tennis courts, for grants, or the handicap access part? Both of
No.
those were things that, like, well, the tennis courts were done when I got off of recreation, but the handicap access part was very live. And that part, I think, is really a real issue, too, that would be good to address.
Accessibility is
Yeah.
definitely on our
The
radar.
handicap one, you know, and there is a spot there, and it might not be everybody's favorite thing to have a ramp, but it's sort of like, would help a lot of people if they wanted to get down there, you know, like,
Right. And the paths to the bathroom need to be of a certain type of
Yeah, right,
gravel
so
and,
people
you know,
can push their wheelchairs.
accessibility.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like it was a great presentation. I think we got some good community input. It sounds like it makes sense moving forward to have the rec commission work with Charlie Kraut. And we could maybe meet after the New Year's and see what type of concept designs he comes up with. It might take him some time.
Did we decide, sorry, after the New Year, or did we decide after our next meeting?
It sounds like it.
Can you pencil in for December 17th, or?
Well, I'm thinking it's going to take him some time also to come up with the concept designs after meeting with you the second week of December. So it might make sense to wait for those to come back rather than rush that end of it and then meet sometime in the beginning of the year.
Okay. I think we can probably be ready by the 17th of December with something from Charlie. He's not very busy right now. No.
Well, whatever.
If you have room on your
Whatever.
agenda.
Yeah, for a presentation versus like
Yeah,
a working
Pencil
session.
it in, and I'll confirm with Dean about whether, you know, we've got our ducks in a row. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bill.
you.
I'm gonna go. Great.
Take a short break.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get my phone, but.
Sure. Couple of minutes.
Take a couple minute break. Get ready for the regular meeting. Yeah? The 7:05 agenda item, the Hauenstein Living Revocable Trust, application for a highway permit, HAP 18-10 at 6317 Spear Street. Hi, you're John.
Yes, I am.
Nice to see you.
So I'm John Hauenstein, and I'm just here for basically see if I can get a permit for a curb cut for the duplex that I've been permitted for.
There was a site visit today. Fritz
Yes.
was there and Junior was there?
Junior and Dean.
And Dean?
Yep.
I think we significantly changed the location from the
We did.
handout here.
So originally, we were going to go to the west side of the barn, close to where my boundary line was for the site, but that would entail paralleling Spear Street over to the barn, which would probably be in the right-of-way. And winter would just be a nightmare with snow cover and
Tossing
thrown
it
off
into
over
each
there.
road.
So, Junior came out, took a look at it, and did some measurements that if we shifted it to the east side, close to my east boundary, we still can't get 500 lineal feet site on either side, well, on the west side, but we can get close to 400. So that's pretty much the only spot that maximizes the actual site coming from the west on that particular location for the barn.
Okay.
So,
Junior, did you have any other thoughts about?
No, other than the only thing that could increase it, that I put on this permit, their application, was that there's some cedar trees that were planted, cedar trees / hedge, if they were moved or removed, it could increase it. But the way it is now, is at like 400 feet.
Is that?
yeah, and those cedar trees are not on my property.
Got it.
So I would have to get permission from the owner
Okay.
and, I'm not sure what that would entail.
Okay. Is any portion of that within the town's right of way that the town could ameliorate?
I think the trees are probably close to the right of way as far as being
I
planted.
think they were just off,
Yeah.
because I think I measured
The
and
branches, the branches
The branches,
are
yeah.
gonna be on the town right of way, definitely in the future, it might be even now, some of them, but I don't know. I don't think it would look good to kind of shear off the
One
front
side.
side of them.
Square cedar trees.
So where is it located on the map that we have? Is it this one here now?
It would be around, yeah, it would come close to that eastern property line.
It would be moved over curb cut being fairly close to this boundary here, so that we get this site distance to, I think we figured out, Dean was driving and Junior was measuring, somewhere in this vicinity is where you could actually see from that location a car coming, heading east on this eastbound lane there. The other westbound, or this would be westbound, no, eastbound, I'm sorry. The westbound lane, we've had more sufficient.
So all the other accesses will be removed?
Yes, this is the only one that's existing now. This was a farm tractor concrete unit that will eventually be removed, and then this would just be basically shifting down through here, park in the back.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve application for highway access permit 18-10 at 6317 Spear Street, moving the driveway access as far east as possible and making it the only access to the parcel,
I'll second that.
subject to Junior's recommendations.
So the recommendation was to make it 75 feet from the barn, which is, I think, in pretty much the same location that you showed it. Culvert required?
15?
Yeah, I said a 15-inch by 30-foot
Okay.
Yep.
culvert.
Now, the 15 inches, because that's just regulation no matter where or what. Okay. Because, I mean, it would be hell and high water before you could even get half of that fill up in that location.
Correct,
probably.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Only
Very
till it-
little water to flow there, but there is some water, but we have a minimum of 15-inch for any driveway culverts. So
Only until it starts freezing a few inches at a time.
that's it.
Then it fills up.
Any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, John.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Selecting 715 items, selecting the bid proposal for generators for Town Hall and the Senior Center.
We had two official bids, one number which was a third number, which was actually the very most expensive. I talked to both of the lower bidders. The cheapest one does not include the 18,000 from Peck Electric. I think it was 18. I didn't bring those papers with me. Did not include any propane service. We had a bid or a description of the work and what Patterson Fuels would provide at cost in terms of installing a tank, which was about, that was $5,300. I'm doing this by memory because I didn't, sorry, just got in town.
Just got back from Chicago.
Yeah, barely. That was $5,300 per installation, so that was about $10,000, $11,000. So if you added that to Peck's bid, that now made Reliant the low bidder. So having talked to both of those contractors, I would recommend we pick Reliant as our contractor. And I would also, since we're significantly under budget, see what, they spec a 20, they both spec a 20 kW generator to meet the demand, to see what like a 24 kW, maybe 25, would give us some expansion room and still stay within our budget. So at this point, I would recommend we pick Reliant, and then at that point, see what they would charge for a
For a differential.
slightly bigger generator.
Would you like to make a
So I
motion?
guess that's a motion to select Reliant, is that Reliant Electric
Right.
as our contractor to provide the town hall and senior center generators.
And then you're gonna ask, I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah. And then, you'll ask them for the
Incremental cost.
incremental cost, and then you'll bring
And
it
then I'll
back to us.
Bring it
and
back to you guys, yes.
We'll decide on how much money,
If we want to do that
if we
or
wanna
stick
do that or
with
not.
the bid.
Okay. Very good.
Discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor of Reliant Electric, selecting Reliant Electric for the generators for Town Hall and Senior Center installation, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes. Thanks for your work, Fritz.
Sure. Well, the next thing is we'll have an agreement that
We'll
we'll
sign.
all see before.
Okay, good.
7:25 agenda item is,
Kim is not here, she is coming. There is a Thompson's Point lease that's up for renewal at 7:30, which no one's planning to be here for that, so you could do that.
do you have that?
Yep.
Anything atypical about this?
I don't think anything's atypical. It's a single lot. It's going to be renewed to the current leaseholder.
So this is the 7:30 agenda item, the Thompson's Point lease for lot 146 at 84 North Shore Road to approve/renew a 20-year lease to Jeffrey D. Horbar and Irene Horbar.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
I would say, and to have, does,
I think either the chair or the vice chair can sign if authorized by the board.
and have the
Authorize
Matt to sign it.
as a duly authorized agent. No more discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I don't know if it requires a notary or not.
It says, in witness whereof, the parties hereunto set their hands to the date recited, date above recited, in the presence of, and then 2 witness signatures. And we have a notary.
That's true.
Witness? You want a witness? We could review the minutes of November 13th. It's the 9 o'clock agenda item. That's a good question.
What was that?
We don't have the minutes?
Really?
No, I never saw.
Nope.
They were in the packet?
We can skip that one.
Sorry about that. My fault.
Just shaved 5 minutes. It's okay. Do we?
Kim won't mind if we just reappoint, but, right? We just make the, what if Kim's not coming? The email wasn't really totally sure she was coming, was it?
Well, previous one, she said she was going to, but if you, 2 people are here for the 7:35 item, but maybe it's too early for that. Do Do you want to do
I think we should just do the reappointment of Ken
okay.
right now, and they come in, we'll congratulate them like we've done before. They're excited to do so. We've seen their emails. I'm happy to be reappointed.
My hesitation is my stall tactic here. Do we see any other easy ones that don't require anyone?
850 item.
We could do the 850 item. Let's do that first and then come back. So the 850 item is hiring of a minutes taker for the Select Board, Planning Commission, and Zoning Board meetings for the town of Charlotte. There were 2 applicants for the position.
Yes.
Both seemed qualified, qualifications and were discussed. Does anyone want to make a motion and have a discussion after?
Sure. I'll make a motion to, I guess, offer employment to Carol Miklos as the town minute taker.
Could you spell her last name, please?
Miklos.
I'll second that.
Is there a discussion?
Well, I think we interviewed him and had our discussion in an executive session, and this is the result of our discussion of the 3 of us that were here for the interviews.
This position is not on the grid.
Right. So
And-
technically, it's a contract position, so it's not a town employee contract.
And do we need that contract, or this would set in motion having the
Right.
contract drawn up to sign at a later
Right.
date?
Yep.
When would Carol begin?
January 3rd is the first meeting.
Do you want to add that into the motion? Or to, sure?
This was from January 1st, basically, to June 30th, 2019.
Yeah, it is a fiscal year contract.
It's a fiscal year contract.
Okay, so I guess it would be for the remaining of the, from January 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2019.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, Kim's here now.
That was good stalling.
That was good.
The 725 item, the reappointment of Ken Spencer and Kim Findlay as Green Up Day co-coordinators for 2019. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kim Findlay, and I'm Junior. Ken and I would love to do Green Up Day again. We enjoy doing it very much, and it seems to go very well.
Great.
Okay, well then I'll make a motion to reappoint Ken Spencer and Kim Findlay as Green Up Day co-coordinators for 2019.
I'll second.
Well, in discussion, really appreciate your time and effort. It's a really important day, and it's nice to see the torch was passed smoothly. I appreciate it.
Nice to see enthusiasm.
For your support, and these two here are very involved in it too, so to thank them as well.
Thank you.
Junior and Abby. So, is that it?
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. Thank you.
All the competition. All that competition for this position.
Yeah, I know. It's very stressful. Okay, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
still ahead of schedule. Let's see. 7:35 item, the grant application for CSWD portable waste stations for events with a match of $483. Margaret, okay. Margaret and Abby are here to present.
Thanks. Hi.
Hey.
So for the past, I think, 4 years since the second grade came to you guys and you passed a policy about having 3 waste stream side-by-side waste sorting stations at events in public spaces. The town has, through the recreation department and the library and the senior center and Dean alerting mostly me to these events, we've been supplying frequently, not 100% of the time, some compost, recycling and trash toters that have been stored at school. And that's been good, and I think it's sort of raised community awareness overall and changed some people's habits for the good. And what's come to our attention is that there are, through CSWD, there are these waste sorting stations called clear stream stations that are very foldable, portable, with clear signage, and they're currently being offered by CSWD for free at events. However, it means going over to Redmond Road and twice, like 4 trips for people, either private events or public events, to get them. So it's not the most convenient. And I think we had been talking about, mostly Margaret and I had been talking about the library taking a role in offering that as a service from the town, not only to public events or events in public spaces, but to anybody in the town who wanted to have practice waste reduction and accurate sorting at their events. So there is this thing called the CSWD Container Grant. We've applied for it in the past and gotten side-by-side containers on the athletic fields, which are kind of clunkier. We also use them for the small toters that I lug in my car to events that I'd like to stop doing that for. So this seemed like a really viable, good idea. And what it would involve, the budget is explained. I hope you guys all have a handout. So I think Margaret felt, well, maybe you could speak for yourself, like why the number 3?
Yes. Why we're getting 3 sets of them?
Yeah, 3 sets of them.
Oh, well, I think it's just good to have them available to as many people as possible and to encourage as much use of this as we can. And I think at some events you might want more than 1 set. I mean, I know like the book sale and that kind of thing, it would be helpful to have more than, 1 out by the food and 1 over somewhere else. And I think that would encourage, a more successful project.
Yep. I sort of thought of this later, and I've been away for a while, but the Recreation Committee, they actually use it a lot at jamborees, and so I think it would be fair to ask both them and the Senior Center if they would be willing to cost share for this, and I haven't done that to date. So the way this costs out is that for 3 clear stream stations, the recycling and trash bags, and that's a very big supply, 200 recycling and trash bags, and 80 bio bags. Those are the compostable liners for the compost toter, would come to the amount said. The total would be $996.50, and originally, so the match would be for $498.25 that CSWD would pay. The town or different town entities would basically pay the whole amount and get reimbursed. That's the way CSWD has done all of their grants. So we were just going to ask the library and the town to split that $498.25, which I don't know how that works in the FY19 budget, but I guess I would like to go ahead and ask Recreation and the Senior Center as well. But we're really here to get your okay, your assent.
On the grant application.
Yes,
Right,
on
to
the
go
grant
forward with the
application,
application.
yes.
I
Yeah, we
think
don't
that
know for sure, then.
We don't know that we would get it, the
The
grant.
library and the recreation and the senior center all comes out of the same pocket. For a couple $100, we'll just approve it as a slide, make a motion to approve the match for, what is it, $498?
Yes.
And 25 cents.
And then for just fiscal year 2020, it would be more supplies as needed, and I don't really think we know what that looks like yet, but,
Yeah, it's,
yeah.
So that would come out of a line item in the select board's budget. Where's,
yeah, the $156. That's just the cleaning supplies kind of thing.
great. So is that in the form of a
That was,
motion?
that was a motion, formal motion to approve the match, $498.25.
And the grant application.
Yeah, and the grant application.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? Thank you for finding grant monies that are, possibilities, even though we might not get it. That is really a service to everyone. No more discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. I think these are
Opposed?
great. I mean, you go to the places and there's a trash can or somebody's got a envelope that says recycle on it. What? Okay, what are we recycling here? This is very,
Really clear.
yeah, really clear.
It's helpful, the more visible that signage and that look and the colors there are, for the more people will catch on to doing this.
Yeah, because you show up someplace and it says, we
Yeah.
recycle. Well, you can't recycle everything. I mean, what do you want? Just paper, just clean paper, plastic too? You want this? This answers that question. I think that's great.
And it seems to be getting standardized at City Market, Healthy Living. I'm seeing it at the schools. So I'm actually kind of now a little familiar with what icons are on
Yeah, it's helpful.
which color.
Thank you.
Great,
All right,
thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Okay. So, this is looking ahead to fiscal year 2020. A proposal for the town to establish a food waste drop-off area. So we've talked a little over the years now about Act 148 requiring households to divert organics from their trash by July of 2020. There was a slight update from the legislature this past year, which removed the deadline for haulers to offer curbside organics hauling. And by organics, I mean things that are not certified organic, but I mean food scraps and any paper products like soiled cardboard or soiled paper, food soiled paper, or paper towels, things like that, that can fully decompose in a commercial or a municipal compost facility like Green Mountain Compost. So the haulers were released from their deadline of offering this service in 2018. It's now extended to 2020, but no homeowner is released from the requirement to divert their food scraps. So I think the state is hoping that because the demand still exists to follow the law when July 2020 comes around, that there will be pressures on the market and for haulers to offer some kind of service. The issue is that in rural communities where there isn't density in the hauling routes, it really has become sort of expensive for haulers to offer this service. So while we don't know for sure what they will be charging for that service, assuming it isn't undone by the legislature, it would be, I think, at least what people are paying for trash and recycling, which is de minimis $31 a month if they have curbside hauling. So it's an expense for the homeowner. And so I've been talking with you about anticipating how to support Charlotte households to divert their food scraps. Many people do home composting in our community. I don't know the exact number, but based on another survey I had done, with 200 respondents, that like 76% of those people do home composting. But there will remain people who can't out of the 1,400 households that we have. So we've talked about what can we do as a town, and I think the idea would be to start small in 2020 and to establish a place where there could be, say, 4 64-gallon toters placed somewhere in town. So I have not worked out all the details of this because it's really sort of floating an idea to you as we get closer to the reality of this, and also perhaps holding a place in the budget or for starting this type of program. So I don't know where the location would be. I do know both Dean and I spoke to, I spoke to 2 haulers. I don't know how many you spoke to. Two. And from a commercial hauling perspective, they would sort of treat, if there was a centralized or 2 centralized places for people to bring their food scraps, they would treat it like a commercial hauling. And what they charge commercial haulers right now is $15 for a 64-gallon toter a week, and they require a minimum of 2 toters to make it worth their while from a business plan point of view. So what that comes out to, if we don't know the location, but if we had those toters, it would come out to $3,120.
Actually, that's for 4.
That's for 4.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I said. 4 toters, okay.
The minimum is $1,560, which would be 2.
Yes, exactly. So while we know that not everybody would use this service, it would be basically a request for the common good, and it would come out to approximately, just for that service, $2.18 a year per household. That is so much less expensive than anyone would pay for, $30, $360 a year for curbside. So it's sort of like looking at it through that lens, I would hope that even if people weren't going to use the service, that they could see merit to that and to giving it a try. The haulers did recommend that there be some sort of containment of the area. And that design is also a little bit up in the air. At school, where I've been involved with this for the last 6 years, there are 10 toters. They're free and uncovered except for a lid. They're by the building, so maybe there's enough activity there that there's been no reported vectors. There are no rats, there's no bears, there's no, it's not been an issue. They're collected every week, and it's just part of the hauling contract at school and has been. And that volume accommodates 45 tons of compostable materials.
And that's just from the cafeteria?
That's just from the school. So it's all the paper towels. It's the cafeteria food waste actually goes into the compost shed that I do work with the 6th graders on. But it's classroom compost, it's cafeteria plates, compostable plates. It's a lot of actually carbon, food soil carbon. But it accommodates 45 tons. I've calculated, and this is really a really rough calculation, that if you had like 100% of the households participating in a food scrap drop-off, we would only need 16 toters, which is twice what school has. It's really not a lot. We're talking about starting with 4. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense. But.
This is going to be fenced in?
So the two haulers I spoke to recommended having containment of some kind. And so I think, again, that's not something like a fence, not a locked fence. To me, there needs to be more research and more design thinking about what makes sense for containment, what that means.
There also needs to be a labor and a designation of who's going to take care of this.
Well, you would be contracting, getting bids from a hauler.
They'll pick it up. I meant during the week when somebody kicks it over and there's stuff all
Yeah.
over. There is no, town department. The school has janitors and what have you and staff there that keep an eye on that. If we put one of these things out back, everybody's gonna drive by and say, am I gonna pick that up?
Well, no, especially if it happens to not be at the school.
So I mean, at the school, sounds like it'd almost be a good spot, but then the school's not gonna want strangers driving in there.
Well, the skating rink area is kind of segmented away from the school by the Quonset hut in a separate parking lot. It has good line of sight, and it's kind of central as far as convenience for East and West Charlotters.
As a location, that's fine, but someone needs to be designated to take care of it.
I think that's realistic. I don't think it would take a lot of time. I oversee the ones at school as much as the janitors do. But I think it is realistic, Fritz, yes.
Did this become part of a person's task to keep an eye on this? Would that be, you have the position, would this become the scope of your job?
My unpaid job. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
maybe it shouldn't be unpaid.
Right.
That's the,
So a lot of this, there are just contingencies, like where would it be, who would be available. I agree, there are things that need to be worked out.
I'm just saying from a budget standpoint, we would probably want to consider more than just the cost of the toters.
Right, okay, I also, if there were a fence, there is a waste reduction grant that we could apply for from CSWD that, they're interested in towns taking on these kinds of projects. There's no guarantee. I don't think they would pay for personnel, but they would pay for infrastructural development, like a fenced-in area.
Like an 8x10.
Yeah.
Yeah, little concrete or
Yeah,
gravel pad.
and they offer up,
Chain link fence or even some boards.
and it's up to $5,000 grant with a 50% cost share.
That would cover it. What do you think about having one central location with 4 instead of 2 locations with 2 each?
For me, my vision would be to start small, but plan for more, because I think that if people had that drop-off center for food scraps available, I think it would actually catch on. And I don't know the answer to, I believe that Heinsberg drop-off center will start up again in some ways that would be available to, East Charlotters? Because a lot of people in that part of town use the Heinsberg drop-off center. I have written a preliminary email to Kurt Prue, who's facilities person for CVSD, and Jean Jensen, the COO, asking them to think about piggybacking on the infrastructure of schools. I think that, there are issues with location, liability, and, insurance. So I don't think it could be where the existing toters are at CVU or CCS, but I wonder if they could consider this. So I sent them an email today. I don't have a response.
Great. And this is getting us thinking about the 2020 budget.
2020 budget.
And not kind of designing every nail in the system.
Exactly. And it's, and
The other thing I like about the concept of having it at the school is it instantly creates an easy access for all of the parents who make a trip out of the house to have their kids participate by bringing their household compost to school with them anyways.
Right, which is a huge educational component too, because if they can really act on that and do it and feel good, my experience is when people do this, they feel good. And yeah, I think that site is appealing to me. I know there are issues with it, but, and I also thought of the west of the Quonset.
Yeah.
Then you're competing with the energy folks that want everybody to take a bus and not be dropped off by cars.
It's a pretty big parking lot.
Yeah. And good sight distance. Another piece is, you know, I'm just brainstorming, convenience. So to travel 500 feet off of a person's habitual day routines to a place that they can't see is a very different behavioral change than, oh, look, there's the town compost. I'll just swing in, drop it off.
And how will that affect the bus parking?
Oh, yeah.
Because the buses do park there,
Right
so.
against the east side.
Right against the west side. Oh, against the
Yeah.
west side of
Of the
the,
Quonset
of the
hut.
Quonset
Yeah.
hut. So they're going in, turning around, and they're backing up.
Yeah, I mean, Casella comes in through there already to collect, but it's not all the individual cars. Fritz, I just remembered something that I asked Chittenden Solid Waste District. They train waste warriors to educate and help people sort at large events. And oftentimes they're looking for tasks for waste warriors. And I suggested that perhaps waste warrior this position in our town to help with the management of the site could be a waste warrior
It's a
volunteer
volunteer.
position.
Great. Get them warrior hats and t-shirts, throw them in there, they go for it.
So this is the budget season.
Yep.
You're thinking, what are you thinking for the next budget cycle? Are you thinking
Well,
of starting with 2 or?
I think I would start with 4 toters, and I would start with, I just rolled back into town, and for the fence structure, I did not get bids, because I don't even know what we're asking people to design, but.
Do you want a little time to think about that?
What?
Do you want some time rather than shoot
Yeah,
off the
rather than just a wild guess like 2,500, which would be half of the $5,000 grant. I don't know if that's.
Just to be clear, the grant, I think, pays 50% up to 5,000.
That's right,
Okay.
yeah. So I would be asking for a 2,500 match, potentially.
Oh, okay. So you're thinking the total cost potentially,
Yeah, I really don't know.
okay.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, in all due respect, we, the homeowner, pay for our trash collection, our recycling. Why would we do food scraps for a whole town when we're all responsible for our own individual?
Right, it's a good question, and one thing that we're used to, I've talked about this before, is that this is a private transaction between homeowner and hauler. And that's what everyone's used to. The town hasn't taken a role in this. So what's different about the food scraps is that it's going to be a law in effect that when the haulers, it's unknown, like, whether the haulers will do this or not. And actually, in my mind, if they do it, it's going to far exceed $2.18 a year.
Do you think it's possible there'll be an opt-out if there's a municipal service for individual contracting?
You mean an opt-out for the haulers?
For individuals.
They can't, well,
There'll be an individual
people can opt out by
responsibility.
home composting.
Right.
Or taking it somewhere themselves.
That's what we're asking them to do. We're just trying to make it more convenient for them and a
Take it
lot less
somewhere closer.
expensive. Yeah. But I don't know if that answers your question. Although I can't tell you, I'm not clairvoyant about what you'll be charged in addition to what you already pay a lot for every month for a hauler, but it will be.
Or how they'll embed it. They may just
Yeah.
embed it in the
No,
trash.
they're not going to be able to embed it
They
in
won't.
trash.
Okay, so
No.
it'll be clear
In
that,
fact, they're talking about pulling out recycling and trash so that it's really transparent what you're paying for, because everything costs money.
right?
Yeah,
Especially,
so,
yeah,
yeah,
with some of the issues
I-
they're having
yeah,
with recycling.
yeah. I mean, my fear is that people would just not comply. And so that's really why I'm here, is because I care a lot about this. And I care about recovering that resource of food. And, you know, a lot of people are working hard in the composting sector. Our state needs help with our soils. It's just something I would like to see people in town supported to do. And I do honestly feel like this would be less expensive.
Yeah, at $2 a
Yeah.
household, it's hard to,
I mean, that's not, if it grew, it would be more, but what I would anticipate, and, without knowing what the hauling costs how they would go up over time, but if you had what I suggested, that 16 64-gallon toters, the cost overall would be $12,480, which would separate from the fence or whatever infrastructure we need. But if you're contracting with a hauler at that rate, it would be $8.72 per household per year if they used it. I mean, that's really reasonable service, in my mind. It's a lot more reasonable than $360. And for people who are renting, this cost would be, so for people who maybe are, on tighter household budgets and are renters, this would be managed through the town rate, which I know is hard for some people.
the other thing that's hard to imagine, although the reality hit, I work with commercial real estate properties in Burlington, and recently one of the, we have several different haulers, but one of the haulers basically stated that if they found cardboard in the roll-off dumpsters, there would be a punitive service fee for having to hand separate that.
Yeah.
And it's imaginable that something similar could happen if there's food contamination in people's waste streams once
Yeah.
the laws ramp up.
Yeah.
And that would definitely be expensive.
Yes, it would. And the state has really not figured that out. The state and the solid waste districts, there's so much contamination, there's so much food. There's just so much contamination that goes into the landfill. The streams are all mixed up.
And
They're not charging anybody, but
Yeah, and the
for
cardboard
enforcement, right.
complication happened because
Yeah,
China stopped
that's right.
accepting cardboard.
Yeah,
So,
yep. Anyway,
well, thank you for your presentation. This is the budget season. It looks like within the next month we'll be kind of sharpening pencils, and I think we'll probably
17th looks like the real crunch, kind of trying to get a real.
So we could probably pencil this in as a budget request and then look at that over the next two meetings.
and would you like to direct me and/or Dean to pursue further information?
Yeah.
Fence, that kind of stuff, so we get a better idea of what the cost actually is gonna be.
What did you say?
Fence.
Fence?
Maybe what those fence specifications might be, or
Anything else?
Is there any, probably not water quality issues with,
There might be, with the Quonset.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be.
or anywhere you put one? I mean, you can't put a,
might have to
I
be
don't
lined.
want it. I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't want one at the flea market. That's just, flea market, seems like it.
well, that's not a convenient place for anybody to stop.
Yeah.
Off of 7.
It's just,
But I don't know, you might have to have, I I don't know, like when you have a fuel tank, you have to have concrete containment, and I don't know.
So the cost is going up each
Could
sentence
be.
that you're
I don't
saying.
know if that's a question, I guess, for,
I mean, CSWD can probably help with some of that, I
Yeah.
think, answering some of those questions.
that'd be a good question to ask them. If we want to put the totes, put a little
Right.
fence around it, do I need to worry about the water runoff from whatever
Right.
comes out of these? In theory, nothing's going to come out of a tote, but every
Right.
time it rains a lot and the trash guy dumps one in a truck, you see where all that water goes, right down the road.
Okay. I wrote down fence and water quality and pad issues.
And some location options. I mean, it seems like the school is, that would be ideal, but there may be, with the wetlands and the district,
And the busing issue and whatnot, so,
Yeah.
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 So-
so maybe some alternates.
Yep.
Right here at Town Hall, right here in the area. You're gonna have it blocked off. You have a roof, got sidewalls. People come to the library.
Something to look
It's
at.
kind of a central location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Abby.
Oh, Abby, I wanted to ask, what do you do about bones when you're recycling? What's bones? T-bone, ham bone,
If it
chicken
goes
bones?
to municipal compost, you can put everything in it. So that's the other thing, so if it goes to Green Mountain Compost, bones, meat, dairy, oils can all be composted. So
In
this,
the toters that you're talking about, can bones go in there?
yes,
Okay.
because they would be sent over to Green Mountain Compost. So they would be hauled to Green Mountain Compost, yes.
Green Mountain Compost is
Green
part of
Mountain.
CSWD.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Used to be Intervale compost.
Yes.
and Got rolled in.
And the mass of material is just, it gets so hot, it breaks everything down. Yes.
Catches fire.
Yeah, yeah.
The last compost piles, we've responded to 2 of them in the last year. Compost heap fires.
Really? Do you want to do the 8:55 item while we're waiting for, or is everyone here? Well,
Everyone's
we're a little bit
shown
early
up.
for CSW. What?
What?
I don't know. I
I
just,
was gonna do the 701 item.
7:01. Oh,
Good. Public's gone, let's ask for comments.
Just looking for a laugh. Is there public comment? All right.
Now that's planning.
You think they're ready?
Donation
Looks like they are.
yeah, I think they are. Good timing.
Hey, welcome.
You're early tonight.
Yeah.
You run a very efficient meeting, Matt.
So I got handed a really good agenda. So thank you, Dean. Let's see. So this is the 8:10 agenda item. Are you guys, everyone's present?
Yes, I think
For us,
You better put a press release out, dude, because you're 5 minutes early.
Let me just tweet that.
Yeah. I never seen that happen here.
So, do you want to?
Sure, if you're ready to start.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that everyone had an opportunity to look at the documents that I sent over to Dean last Wednesday. So as has been customary the past couple of years, I provided you with a narrative on the proposed FY20, hard to believe we're saying that, budget. The process that we went through, what's driving our decrease in our overall budget and our request for appropriation this year. That doesn't mean that some line items aren't increasing, but overall, we're presenting a slightly reduced budget from prior years.
We have,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have the same issues that everybody else does. We have, increasing utility costs, cost of living for payroll and increasing healthcare costs. But we went through, as you know by now, we went through a leadership restructuring, streamlined the leadership, went to a sort of a single leadership structure, which is similar to what's being done around the U.S. for fire and EMS. And the result of that is we pass on to the town some cost savings implicit in that.
So in addition to the narrative, you have the management financial report. New this year is the operating trends, which shows you visually where we are current year, meaning FY19. We're a little bit more than a quarter into that, and what we're proposing for next year. The operating budget comparative, which actually has 4 years worth of data, and then the capital reserve fund projection, which I worked with Dean on, and we'll talk about that more when we get to it. So maybe a good place to start is to maybe ask if there's specific questions, because I'm assuming everyone's reviewed the information. So why don't we just start that way, unless you have a different way you want to approach this, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, because we could go through line by line, but the end result is our appropriation request last year was $669,324, and our request this year from the town is down slightly to $661,064. So that is 0.14% decrease. There are items that are increasing, as I alluded to previously. One of the major assumption changes that was made in the FY20 budget is that in the past, we've taken the prior year's actuals for utilities and increased it by 5%. Well, because we're actually using FY18's actual, which is, we haven't even seen this year's utility rates. I took last year's actual and increased it by 10%. And Matt, you may recall that when we've come in for some of our quarterlies, you've always asked why the utilities are so far off. I hope that that assumption will relieve some of that variance. So if you look at the trends, let's start there. Basically, everything is just about where it was last year as far as the revenue expectations are up slightly. The expenses are slightly down, as well as the...
If you would, explain the bars, because
okay, so
they don't necessarily immediately jump off the page.
So working left to right on the chart, first set of 3 bars are your FY19 appropriation. First one of the 3, the smallest, is the revenue that we bring to the table. In other words, the patient billing revenue and the intercept billing. Our expenses are the next, and the appropriation request to the town. The same holds true in the second set of graphics, which would be FY20. If you go over to the actual table itself, you'll notice the first line item says town appropriation, and that was purposefully left blank because in order for the formula to work, I wanted it to flow down to the bottom so you saw what our total expenses were and what the revenue stream was directly from CVFRS. And then the top table, right under where it says budget trends, actually fills in through a calculation what the appropriation is. Oh, good, you have the color one. Wages, so the way the table is broken out, it's the income, which is specifically just patient billing, and miscellaneous income is the revenue from intercept billings. All of our personnel expenses, meaning wages, benefits, member incentives, and our payroll taxes are all in that next grouping, and then all the other operating expenses, regardless of which division, whether or not it's EMS division or fire division, are captured there. If someone really looked at this, they'd look all the way down to the bottom and say, okay, you have all these expenses, and then down the bottom you have fire division and rescue division, which actually doesn't necessarily tie out to the budget versus actual line by line, and that's because items such as your apparatus repair and maintenance, your apparatus fuel, your radio maintenance, your dispatching fees, all of those are captured as joined operating expenses. So you may actually want to look at those items that say fire division and rescue division are unique to that division, i.e. In fire you have the FISO testing, which is specific just to fire. The foam, the chemicals, hose, things of that nature are captured under the fire division. Rescue division has similar items that pertain solely to them, that there's no relationship across divisions. So those are not discretionary expenses for those divisions, but they are unique just to fire or rescue. Okay?
Questions, thoughts, observations?
So that would correspond on the budget overview to 52,000 and 53,000 items? Some of them would be contained in the fire
Yep,
division or rescue division.
Yeah.
So somewhere in my work papers, I actually have them checked off. So those items that are specific to fire, which are captured in that number 49,900, would be on the larger spreadsheet, Fritz. Fire equipment maintenance, the NFPA, ISO testing, the foam and chemicals, fire training, auxiliary support, the hose and fittings, the dry hydrants, the air pack maintenance, protective clothing, the fire warden expense, and under rescue, it speaks to that. I was going to use your number. The rescue specific is the medical supplies and oxygen, rescue training, the intercept fees to other agencies, and the patient billing service fee, which is unique to rescue. And if you recall, last year we notified you that we were changing our billing service effective July 1st of this year. So this budget reflects that change on a full year basis from 8%, which we used to pay, down to 5%. So there was a savings there of an immediate 3%, although the number isn't a direct 3% change year to year because we increased our net patient revenue number as well.
Almost offsets the Montpelier tax.
Mm-hmm.
Ambulance tax.
Any questions on the operating budget?
I was wondering why, well, I'll wait. Has nothing, never mind. I'll wait.
Okay, so we're done with operating for now? Okay, good. Next thing we wanted to talk about was the capital reserve fund projection. Dean, if you can bring the capital reserve fund up. Dean and I have shared this spreadsheet back and forth. As you recall, the top section of the spreadsheet, including down to the line where it says expenditures, is controllable by the select board. That's all driven by the grand list, what the select board decides to fund as far as an allocation to the fund, any of the bond payments, principal interest, things of that nature. Let's just concentrate for the time being on the expenditures. A couple changes that you'll note in FY 19-20, the replacement of the 2006 ambulance, that was an increase over last year from $250 to $275, And that's based on data that we've received from surrounding communities that have recently purchased an ambulance, that number is more realistic of what it's costing than the placeholder we had previously. There was also a bump up in the replacement of the 2004 Seagrave, slated for,
Actually, the tanker was a
the
bump
tanker
up.
is the bump up, okay.
The Seagrave we pushed out.
The Seagrave we pushed out. It was originally slated for the year 23, 24, and we moved that out 2 years to 25, 26, and replaced that placeholder with replacement of the 2014 ambulance in the fiscal year 23, 24, because that ambulance would then be 10 years old when we
Right.
started looking for it, and that gets to the useful life of that piece of equipment. So those are the changes as far as apparatus are concerned.
Am I looking at the same sheet that you have?
Yep, mine's just small.
Okay.
I do mine on the half by 11.
Could we back up to 2019, 2020?
Yep,
I'm looking at the expenditures and trying to see a discrepancy.
So after you get through the apparatus, there is one other addition, and that is the addition of personal protective equipment for $4,500 for rescue.
I'm adding up all of the expenditures from the expenditure line down to total expenditures, and I'm coming up with $314,000.
Dean, you want to check your formula?
Yeah, I have the PDF here. I don't have, I can.
I mean, you just look at it, 275
Yep.
plus 22 plus 10.
I did.
I didn't check his formulas, I just gave him
Did
numbers.
he have the bond payments in there too also, probably?
Because you have to include the bond
It
payments.
would be, yeah, it would, right,
40,
the,
60 bond, yeah.
right.
Okay, and I thought with the bonds, the first year, there's not a bond payment?
There's a interest
That was
payment,
last
not a
year.
principal payment. So the principal payment would kick in 2021.
That's for the ambulance.
Right.
So the debt service is the $100,000.
The station,
And
the
change.
original Seagrave,
Right.
Yeah. So the station repayment, which is done in 2019, is $20,000 for, this will be the last year, meaning fiscal year 20. Then underneath that, the Seagrave is $20,000. That goes until 2024. The 31,250 is the KME pumper, which expires in, is that right, 2037?
that's the new one that's sitting over there.
And then the interest payment for current bonds, meaning those three, and then the additional proposed bond interest for the ambulance. I don't know why that's an ambulance in 2020. That should be the bond interest on the tanker.
No, that's, the ambulance, if it's purchased this, the FY.
Replacing a 2006
Six.
ambulance?
Gotcha. Okay, that's right, we're next year. Sorry.
And that's, you think necessary?
It's a shop queen right now. It's costing time and money to keep it in service when the other truck needs to be out of service. So when they get to that 10-year life cycle on an ambulance, they're road hard. The gas pedal has an on and off position. The brakes have an on and off position. There's a lot of complicated electronics on them. We've had wiring issues, not just on this one.
CO leaks.
We have exhaust leaks causing CO problems that we've had to chase down. Not even this ambulance, but we had the previous vans we had, both of them. As they got older, they developed electrical issues and became a nightmare to one of them 2 ambulances ago. The select board had us donate it to, because none of us felt good selling it to someone to use it for an ambulance around here. When you get to that age, we've already run into on this 2006, when the truck was spec'd, it was spec'd as a good truck. But now with the newer equipment on it, the truck didn't have an inverter on it. Without the inverter, we couldn't use the auto pulse or the suction that we now need So we had to install one, but as you get up to that end of that lifespan, you're also getting out of the technology of the vehicle. So.
How come Rescue doesn't use a personal vehicle to go up to the Shelburne Market every often for lunch? I've heard about it a lot of times. I've seen it myself.
That was
How come
within, the
do
mobile
that?
to the Shelburne Market is within their service area, what we call a service area. We do not want them using a personal vehicle to go to the market, because if you keel over with a heart attack and they're in Shelburne with a personal vehicle, the crew's no longer there with the ambulance.
Can somebody go for them? They have to go two together?
There's 2 people on the crew, so one of them leaves, then the other one doesn't have a full crew. You'd have to have an extra employee. So they're allowed to go within their service area so they can
Right,
respond.
does that make sense?
Yes, I understand.
And they are limited to, unless it's one time a shift,
And they don't go every day.
they don't go every day.
Pretty often.
Well,
And they're also encouraged to stop on their way back from the hospital.
yes.
And sometimes they're doing it because they have to go up and get gas. So if they're done a call to the south, our gas fueling relationship is with Champlain Oil. So that's where they need to go to get gas. They get a significant discount filling up there versus, what is it, a mobile station down there in
Yeah.
Virgins?
Yeah, mobile and a Shell. It is a standard practice for the truck to go with the crews. If you go up into Burlington, you'll find South Burlington's ladder truck at Hannaford's, or the crew shops for dinner. You do not want to separate the crew from the apparatus. We've limited it, but again, there's not a lot of options for people for what we pay people to purchase in this town at a reasonable. There's no supermarket. There's a couple higher end delis, but
I've even negotiated, a discount on the sandwiches at the Oak Brick as an example, to try to give them other options.
And Philo Ridge.
In Philo Ridge too, yeah.
Yeah, which gives them 10% off.
They also will bundle trips together. So if we need something for.
It's just a question that
Right.
occurred, so I
No,
understand.
I totally
Glad to
understand,
hear
because
lots of
as a
reasons.
taxpayer, we've had that conversation internally as well.
yes.
Okay, there are a lot of answers right there.
So what's the basic EMT payroll take home?
Take home,
$17 an hour?
oh, no.
No, God, no.
Less.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like maybe 15, 12?
Some of your EMTs are under the $15.
Yeah, it's like,
So if you're making $12 an hour and you gotta go to Philo Ridge and get a $15, $20 lunch, you can go to
An AEMT
Tenny's, get a cheaper one.
is under 16, an EMT is under 14.
That's their pay rate?
That's their pay rate,
Their
yeah.
pay rate.
Mhm. They're not making big bucks. Especially when you look at some of the trauma that they encounter, it's a lot to ask.
now if you see them at the Dunkin' Donuts, unless they're on their way back from the hospital, that would be another issue.
Then we wanna know.
That would be another issue.
But I think the policy that's in place, Tom, you can refresh me if I'm misreading this, but if they're on their way back from the hospital, they can stop on their way back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, unless they're,
But they can't go out, like, they can stop on the way back from UVMMC and pick up something that they've called in ahead of time at Route 7 Deli, but they cannot drive from here to there to pick up an order. But if it's on their way back.
Stay within there.
Yeah, within
The-
our service area.
Our limiting things are the mobile on the Ferrisburg line. They're not even supposed to take the truck over to Cookie Love and up to the supermarket in Shelburne. So they have access to a supermarket and they have access.
In our gas station.
and when they're in Shelburne, there should be just one in the store, because there's some radio issues in the store itself.
So you'll always see somebody sitting in the rig in the parking lot so that they're ready to roll. Case in point too, Carrie, they're actually closer to some of our Charlotte residents responding from there than they are from the station. So, you know, depending upon where you're located in Charlotte, some people may look at that as a benefit. Personally, for me, because I'm on the wrong side of the bridge down by the town beach, it would actually take them longer to get from there to my house than if they were at the station.
And what kind of discount do you get through Champlain Oil?
I would have to go back and look at it, but it's cents per gallon.
I'd like to know what that is. Well, not
So may I
right
have to get
now.
back to
It's a
the...
mute point, there's no diesel in town anyways.
Oh, it's all diesel?
It's all diesel.
Okay, all the trucks.
Yes,
Mhm.
every one of our trucks are
Everyone's
diesel.
too.
Yeah.
Everything except
gas.
the chainsaws and the
And they're enough of a nightmare to keep running because they're gas anyways.
They're diesel.
Huh?
Chainsaws.
I haven't found one yet. I'd like to find a good electric one, but
yeah.
And was it last year, Fritz, refresh my memory too, on the facilities that we switched from number 2 heating oil to heat the building to kerosene? Because that's more cost effective as well.
I think it was diesel number 2 or something.
yeah.
We switched to.
It wasn't at the time.
So I'm just,
So aside from the mathematical error on the,
well, no, that's fine. I just wanted to just keep moving with
Yeah.
the long-range planning of the capital reserve fund to maintain insolvency. And it looks like 2 line items could be added to create a more accurate picture. One would be in FY 25-26, in the revenue, we would add that 675 bonding like we did for the previous 3.
Right, that was, they,
And it would show at the bottom of 180, 326. So we still have a depleting balance.
Remember, when we're giving you these numbers, I'm using a crystal ball to.
Yes,
out
that I completely appreciate.
and
But,
and the interest is a crystal ball as well.
right, that would be the second. So the Seagrave FY 24 would be a 4th line, proposed bond, interest. You have the, well, 2 more lines, a
Bond-
proposed bond principal and a
Right.
proposed bond interest.
Right.
So that we could see that accurately reflected. It'd probably be closer to the, well, it'd be 190 probably. So if we could see that before the final
Yep.
budget cycle.
Yep.
And then seeing that 20,000+ in the next fiscal year, that would help. But what's apparent, just from a broad brush, is that the proposal this year for $120,000 level funding over the same amount of time is not going to be enough to keep the fund solvent.
Right, because we go into the red in 2021.
So,
The interest rates are starting to creep up too.
right, so
Makes
the,
sense to start trying to mitigate that by,
having more available
back
in the reserve fund.
I mean, in the earlier years, that's why it went down so far, because it was cheaper to loan than it was to fund it.
Yeah, the fund was originally set up to, when the interest rates were higher, and we had to purchase the Seagrave and the station almost back to back. The select board and the fire, and Chris Davis worked together with some financial people much smarter than me, and they realized if they built the fund up, we pay cash for these items, and we wouldn't incur the interest charge of a bond payment over time. And once interest tanked, it was cheaper to borrow money than it was to save money. So as it swings up, keep watching that, because maybe that's the time you want to.
And that's the planning. I just want to start that discussion now, because it's on everyone's radar, and looking out 2 years, the sooner we make a correction, the less impact it will have on the tax rate as well.
What is the Seagrave? What kind of?
It's a pumper.
It's a pumper, okay.
So it'll be 20, we pushed it out a couple, so it wasn't right on top of an ambulance. We try to roll the pumpers at 20 years now, so we no longer have a 40-year-old one.
And there was conscious discussion about making sure that pieces of apparatus, there was at least 1 year in between each purchase as well.
Yeah. So we did consciously move it out a little bit, and as they get to the end of their service life again, they become service challenged.
I'm curious, I was just going to ask me about the process between ourselves and this board, the process to get to, a sustainable surplus for capital spending. I mean, 120 might not be the number.
Doesn't seem it.
And we sacrificed some last year.
That was totally unexpected and.
Well, it was, it seemed like the right thing to do at the time, and there was, various parts of the town were making a contribution for the good. On the high side, what is it? It's 2.5 cents on the grand list. Right?
Well, I mean, I think we've gotten away from basing it on percent of the grand list and just made it flat. For a while, it was 120.
180.
We have
180,
gotten away from that, but when the
But the taxpayers have never
original
codified that.
approval was up to 3 cents on the grand list, the select board could put up to 3 cents. If you look back,
Is
at
it
the
3
approval,
or 2.5?
I believe it was 3.
Okay.
We never hit 3.
Which
we
would
never
be
needed it.
278,000.
Right, 3 is a big number. So the question is, how do we get at what's the right number? Is that something we should kind of jointly work on? Is that something we should look at from a math standpoint?
I think both. I think in the budget season is the time for you guys to say, hey, listen, this is what we're gonna need this year. I mean, 2 years ago, the $220,000 for the air packs wasn't on our radar. It came on very quickly. We had the money in the reserve fund. It was an unexpected hit to the calculus, but it still looks like solvency is possible. Coming up with an estimate of what that right number is. I can tell you just my limited experience, 5 years on the board now.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a desire with reserve funds to be a mitigating impact on fluctuations in the tax rate. And that's part of the purpose of them being set up, is to plan to stock away a little extra money, so over a period of time, planned expenses won't be a big hit on any given tax rate. That the conservation fund used to be 2 cents on the tax rate. We've moved away from that to a need-based, and what are their projections? And I think of all the reserve funds, Fire and Rescue has the clearest projections with the air packs aside.
We try to go through it annually. Merging the 2 years on the air packs and the bottles made sense because we got a hell of a deal in the package when we were done.
Yeah,
Instead of
I think everyone
mismatching.
agreed, and at town meeting, there was consensus also.
Yes, thankfully.
Yeah.
So what would be, I don't want to necessarily use the word comfort level, but what would be the sense of the board as far as how many years in the future before you want to see it go negative? So break even.
I don't think you want to see
out
it
is
negative
okay,
if what I'm
or-
listening. You want to start building it back. Is that what I'm hearing, Matt?
I mean, from a fiscally responsible perspective, from my opinion, it would be to never have a reserve fund be negative. Having a reserve fund have $600,000 sitting in it, waiting to be spent, I think is a model that the town has moved away from, unless interest rates get back up into the 17% like they were in the 80s, so it's somewhere in the middle, I think.
I can get it. I didn't bring it
As far
today.
as looking at the idea of mitigating the impact to the tax rate, I'm looking at spreading out the rate of increase, but clearly there needs to be a rate of increase to this appropriation. So $80,000 last year, $120,000 for the next fiscal year. That's a significant increase already. Maybe we look at have a reducing rate of increase over the next 2 years, and I think we can get there.
Well, we went from 180 to
140.
120 to 80, so that was
significant
significant
decrease.
decrease
Right.
over 3 years, which was probably maybe a little too much.
Well, and at a time that we didn't know that the 220 was coming out of it for the air packs.
Well, they
As far
were,
as the-
they were in there, but as a 110 a year.
110 a year,
Yes.
right, over the 2 years. So
Yes.
that was, you know, a $110,000 hit. If you look at that
Yep.
on the bottom line, it put us out 4 or 5 years. As far
Well,
as
it
when we would have
come
been in
out
the red.
Next year anyways, but.
Yeah, we were losing 30,000 a year. That took 3.5 years.
mean,
You know,
just-
advance the schedule 3.5 years. So if we can, I think, build it up in a similar manner.
I think increasing gradually over time would make the most sense. It's not gonna slap everyone with a big increase. And like I said, legitimately, we've gone from 180 to 80. If we start bringing it back up, it's back to closer to not it's historical, but more of what makes sense. I know we try to tweak that every year. I go through the fire officers, what are these items are gonna expire, what items are gonna die over this period, and we try to factor them in and spread them out, so you're not, all of a sudden, I'm not over here crying that I blew up 3 thermal imaging cameras because they're 7 years old and that's their lifespan. I want to try to build those items in, and some of those items have to be added further out. We added them before and we've gone through. Now we got to take that time period again, stick them in further out into the budget to at least warn you ahead of time that 5, 6 years from now, we're going to need to replace this or this.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, in the 5 years I've been looking at this reserve fund, the projected equipment costs have appeared because of a decision to move them out of an operating budget
Yes.
and into here. So that was another impact to the reserve fund
Yes, some
that's
of the things
new
like-
to
like-
its construction.
Like the tires, the auditor figured because we are required to replace them every 7 years, he wants those as a capital item. Other than that, I'd have to take the 3,000 that's there and add it into the budget.
Right, and I don't see any traction to that change. I just wanted to highlight that there were changes
Yeah.
Right.
to the draws on this
Yes.
reserve fund that didn't exist 3,
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be interesting to take a fresh look at, and I know when we look at projecting our costs on equipment, we do have an inflation factor, but I think we could refine our approach a little bit further. And I also wonder, and I've asked this question before, about the interest on these balances. I mean, now that money market rates, money market rates are above 2% for institutions, or at least they should be.
Because there's nothing on the top part of the chart that says
It
that
could be,
it's in an
we could
interest-bearing
add an
Right.
interest
account and
component
it
to
should be added into there.
Like some of the special funds that you manage.
I don't know whether that's allowed for a municipality or whether, we can check into it, but I think, we're always gonna err on the conservative side and not.
But why, but the money's sitting in some kind of an account earning some interest, right? I'm assuming it's not just sitting there
I think it's in a
without
checking
any
account,
interest.
isn't it?
Mary would be the one to answer that.
And there are checking accounts that have guaranteed interest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
Yeah,
where the town has
In most
checking right
money
now.
markets, you can write X number of checks or transfer up to 3 times per month. So
Or
there's
an-
no reason why you couldn't actually have it in that type of vehicle, but that's in your purview, not ours.
Or an account like this that theoretically has limited activity.
Right.
At our firm, we've got rates in the, 220 range right now for money market. So presumably, so does everybody else, so.
So Dan, you're right as far as projecting out being conservative, but there should be interest earned in prior years that's actual interest earned on the money that was sitting there.
Yeah,
'Cause if
I'm not sure.
we have 358,000
I mean, I
sitting
can
in an
ask.
account, if we're not getting interest on that,
I can ask.
That's irresponsible, if it's legal.
but if you look at your annual report, your financial statements, you earn interest on items. And this is a special fund, so it's not in the municipality's operating fund, so I think it would qualify for a conversation anyway.
Yeah, something we could look at.
So do you want me to work with Dean as far as coming up with a number
mean, I used
Keeping it at
150,000 just to play with it, and it brought it out several more years.
It does.
Yeah.
And, if it's 160 one more year, we
Yeah.
could really put it off. I'd like to think about having a reserve fund that's in the black in the distance out that we look at it. So a 10-year solvency would be
We originally
responsible.
built this as a 15-year. Like I said, we have to add the small items back in, but now that we purchased the air packs this year, in 15 years, we're gonna be looking at that item again, because that's when they basically expire. So,
Yeah, it's as much as a vehicle.
Yeah,
at that
so
point,
it's,
doing it all at once.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
Matt, do you think there'd be consensus at leaving the FY 1920, funding that at 120, and then looking at the increase starting in 2021?
Yeah, it'd be hard for me to imagine thinking about putting any less in than 120. What do other people think?
I look at the differences on the bottom. The total that's accumulated, how much negative, how fast it goes negative every year. It's for
Right.
like 3 years in a row, it's like 30 grand.
Exactly.
Until you get to that point where you need to add those two items to show the interest instead of taking that big expense off. So you would say like, maybe next year would be 140 and then 160 in 2022.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just an eyeball thing. If you could plug those in, do a couple of iterations and see where it actually levels out on the bottom.
So you're saying 120, 140, 160, and 180 and 22, 23, Fritz?
Well, once you get up to 160, that might make the bottom line pretty flat. Without.
It's always a decision, this is for purposes of this chart and for, a look forward, but it's not, I'm assuming it's something that could be revisited each year, right?
Every year we
It is.
revisit how much to put in.
So it's not a commitment
Correct.
by anyone.
It's a projection.
And it's also
interest rates, there's some thinking right now that the Fed may not raise rates next month, as it's been projected for all year. There's some thinking that rates may not go up as fast as originally expected, so.
Well, that's kind of the dice that
But
we
we
have to
don't know.
roll too, as to whether or not you want to go back to we'll fund it in cash strategy or fund bond payment strategy.
Right.
That's changed like 3 or 4 years ago from cash to funding with bonds. And at some point in time, if you're thinking that, well, your crystal ball is making you nervous and you need to start putting more in it.
And then you have the conversation about, do people that are currently living in town want to pay for it in advance when they're not going to be living here in 10 years? Or
Well,
would they rather-
there's two thoughts to that. If you're bonding a truck and someone moves out of town, they got to use it while they were here. And if you're paying a truck, putting money in for a future purchase, you're using the truck that's here now. And we're wearing it out, so you're paying to replace it down the road. There's both ways of looking at it in the fire service, because a lot of departments do it one way and a lot of them bond, a lot of them run reserve funds.
Well, and also in the bigger picture, unless someone moves to Antarctica, they'll be paying for those costs in the community they move to.
Yeah.
So, it's everyone's
There's
responsibility.
no free lunch in there.
Not really.
Not anymore. Not since I left kindergarten.
Okay, well, that's good. And
So the
then,
action item is just to work on the allocation to the fund.
yeah, maybe add the line item for the 3 line items for the 675. And will the air packs won't show up again yet?
It's 15, be at least a 15-year
Yeah,
before it shows
so
up
that's
again.
out of range.
What I purchased, bought a 15-year
Great.
warranty right through.
It might not be a bad exercise to go through this and extend it out.
I do
Actually, if
intend
you
to.
look at the full spreadsheet, it does go.
Okay,
further
just so
out
you
than
can,
this.
so other people can see that, ambulance is a 10-year truck, a pumper's a 20-year truck, air packs are 15 years.
Yeah.
That's not obvious, or maybe just a
Thermometers are
notation or
7,
something in here.
Gas meters are 7, things like that. And we do intend to go through it again this winter and try to get better numbers, like the bunker gear. We've been 10,000 for 5 years. I know in 5 years it's not gonna pay for.
Is it hard to add a column in this?
No.
Could we add, after the explanation, you know, of what everything is, just add a short column that says their
Useful
lifespan?
life.
Yeah, you kind of have it, it is hard to see under the bond payment section, expires 2019, but expires 2024. But it would be clearer with a column.
Yeah.
It would be pretty easy to populate that.
Yeah.
Because we originally, as a corporation, we went through at least the big items, that the ambulances are a 10-year item, 5 front, 5 back. Pumpers are a 20-year item, 10 front, 10 back. Tankers, we keep them cheap and easy as you can. They're a 25-year item that you can get out of them. So
Maybe that's something
that's somewhere in our corporate policies.
we can figure out the numbers to populate, and Dean can stick it in.
Yeah, I mean, when you go out too far, too many years ahead, you know, the accuracy is a little questionable both on the equipment cost side and the interest rate side, but
Yeah.
it's probably still worth doing.
We've come pretty close over time between you and me, and
Yeah.
the industry average doesn't vary much. In fire apparatus, it's 7 to 10% annually, unless DOT changes a motor regulation. That was a big hit a couple times on us. And they went to the urea on them, that cost more. The fire apparatus is usually fairly steady climb, and it's higher than normal because it's not 6 automakers against each other. You got 30 builders, but their costs are all very competitive because we all go out to bid, and if they want the job, they got to be sharp.
Anything else on capital?
Well, I think there's only one other committee that's requested a reduction in town appropriation for next year, for this fiscal year, so I appreciate your hard work, and certainly shows up on the,
We want to give the best service for a reasonable price in the community, and we're not out to waste money, we're out to protect people and help people and keep our guys safe at the same time. So I can tell you very much, the younger guys very much appreciated being in the new air packs. I bet you've heard from them already. So. Yes, yeah. Yes.
You can call me younger guy, that's fine. I'll take that one.
Take it and smile, Fritz.
I'm actually surprised, you know, that it to have a labor-intensive appropriation to actually go down, considering health and cost of living and everything else.
We did a lot of hard work to get that. Patrice did a lot of work, Tom. And we did a lot of hard work in our budget too, because labor is our biggest cost. It's the biggest cost of fire rescue everywhere. I do know neighboring departments are running up, the ones that have been trying to do it for volunteers for years. They're not getting out the door. And it hurts the community, so.
I really appreciate what
Yeah.
you do.
We may actually end up seeing a market adjustment with the EMT rates, their pay rates, sometime in the not too distant future. Before this budget probably goes into effect, but after we've already approved it, because there is going to be that push to make sure that everyone's at least at 15 or up.
Yeah.
be ahead of any
And there's
legislation.
So I mean,
And
there
there's
will
also
be an
two
increase there.
Bidding war, not so many people out there.
Yeah, and there's two squads that around us that are gonna have to, if they wanna keep from going into the conditional licenses, start hiring more people. So, good, because they're out of service rates.
They're not very far away, and you probably recognize the names too.
Yeah.
Of the towns.
What letters did they start with?
Some of them
But-
might be
but the-
where that
but-
market is.
But the plus side of that, if they're out of service, we get the billable call.
So, you know, we benefit to some extent if
Yeah.
we pick up one of their calls, because we do, the transport we bill and we get the insurance revenue. So it helps the town out too.
But we should always offer milk and cookies if you transport, that way they get, encourage people to transport.
Yes.
instead of-
Yeah, we don't accept no. Do you want to be transported? We don't ask that question. Any other questions? Good.
Thank you.
So, do you foresee us being back on the budget on your agenda in January?
What do we have?
I mean, we're going to be looking at the whole budget in probably December 17th, and then again in January. So I don't think it would be a specific department, but it might be playing with some numbers.
Yeah, would you like to be invited if there are any major changes? How would you
It's
like?
going to be an impact to us, obviously.
Okay.
Anything is about, you want those
If you'd like to
capital-
give us more money next year, you know.
Don't invite us.
We could
Invite you.
probably give those people that make under $14 an hour a raise, besides their cost of living, but, yeah, just keep us.
Yeah, it's going to be,
posted
I mean,
if
it's probably going to
we
be the
should come
capital
back.
reserve fund that gets played with, so.
Yeah.
Gary, because it's, with the realization that we do diesel, do you still want me to get back to you on the, just wanted to make sure I had all my action items.
Actually, even the gasoline we burn, I don't burn regular gasoline because of the ethanol in it ruins the tools over time sitting in them. We burn either aviation gas or racing fuel. It costs more money, but the tool starts when we pull the cord. So,
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem.
huh?
It shouldn't be a problem with the new one.
It shouldn't be, but I've seen chainsaws come off the roof before because they wouldn't start. And some of ours are old enough to vote, so.
They voted 2 or 3 times in the last
Yeah.
election, right?
Yeah.
No? We
But
good?
that's another thing.
Great, thank you.
Good night.
Yeah, you too. Take a second. Running a little late, I apologize, Lori. The 8:40 agenda item, donation of trail easement along Town Lake Trail.
So you had asked us to come back after I initially asked for it as part of an update. The request was initially about, there's a landowner property on Greenbush Road that is interested in donating a trail easement that is in the corridor from co-housing up through the Mac Farm to the Burns property. Town has an easement on the Mac Farm, so it's, and then the Burns property is town-owned land. And then, so it was my request to have the town attorney, review our form of the easement. We haven't had a trail easement in a while, and also do a quick review of the property title search. And Mike Russell has now offered to do a one title search, which is basically what I had requested. So that would be volunteer provided. And so, but I think it would be desirable to have the town attorney just review the form of the trail easement. But, so as a prelude to Lori being here and providing this map, which I think is clearly shows the easement and the properties that are involved.
Right, so as we're going forward with the Town Lake Trail, these properties, the 1 through 5 are properties that are along that corridor as we look from co-housing to get into the West Charlotte Village. And as we start looking to get the easements, it seems like having the attorney look at the actual easement template that we have would be good. In the time that I've been on the Trails Committee, other than through the land trust, those have been the easements we've received. So we haven't actually done this kind of easement, although it has been done in the past. So we thought, given the amount of time, it would be nice to have the attorney look it over and at least kind of approve the template. And then as these easements become available, I guess Mike Russell has agreed to do the first one.
Pro bono.
Pro bono, which is very nice. I don't know that that would happen all the time. Some may be more complicated than others, depending on the situation with that property and the owners, and if it's in a trust or if it's, you know, what the situation is. So I guess the request tonight is to have that preliminary, be able to take the easement and have the attorney look at it and give a preliminary approval of it, that it is the legal document that we would want to use for easements. We have in the past, so I don't think that there's any reason that we wouldn't use the same document for easements in the future. It has, you know, the 20-foot right-of-way easement with, we usually, what we have been doing for the Townley Trail is an 8-foot trail within that 20-foot easement.
So I guess one of my...
That document,
Yeah, I do. I have it.
should we see it?
You can.
I don't know, you can send it to me, but
Sure.
seems like,
I mean, it also talks
well, no,
about,
yeah.
it also mentions that any landowner is not liable.
Yeah, I want to
because of,
see
you know,
that
all
document,
kind of stuff.
definitely.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't
Right.
want to do hearsay, I want to read it.
Right, that makes sense.
I guess my other question is, knowing what the Trails Committee knows now about easements and about the changing construction and needs of the trail system, would there be things you want to add to the easement, increasing to 10 feet so that we have the mowable shoulders? You know, I know when we looked at the trail at co-housing going towards the ball fields, it was gracious that the landowners are allowing the town to go beyond the easement, but if we're structuring new easements, it might make sense to have them be more in line with what the town's needs are going to be for the trail, rather than being boxed in and then asking for permission later.
Right.
I mean, I think in the co-housing area, that I guess is basically on the co-housing property, the easement is 20 feet wide, and then the trail is 8 feet wide, as Lori said, and then we mow the additional probably 4 feet on either side, but that's still within the easement. That's not outside the easement, and it's, so all that's, you know, as allowed by the easement document. You know, I don't know that it's actually specified in the easement as far as how wide the trail is versus the mowing and the shoulder, but
And that's kind of my question.
Yeah, right.
Because this is a 20-year-old document.
Right. And
Are there
So
things that
we're
the
not
town
looking at it
is
right
looking to
here,
improve in
talking
the
about it.
document?
It's a pretty basic document. The Vermont Land Trust version is a bit more complicated, and that is, some of the easements that we've received in the past have been through Vermont Land Trust, and
So the Trail Committee, I'm just trying to read between the lines, the Trail Committee is not really interested in any changes to the easement language. You've looked at it.
Yes, we have looked at it. You know, considering we already have 2 miles of trails that are 8 foot wide, you know, if we went to a 10-foot wide trail for a mile and then went back to the easement on Robert Matt, I mean, that's not even, it's like a half a mile. If we went It just doesn't make sense, considering all the other easements we have.
Right, but the easement could say up to 10 foot, so you could leave them all 8 foot.
The trail could still be spec'd consistently.
They're
This trail
all
could
eight-
still be spec, you just, I think Matt's just trying to get at the point
Are there any
of
other-
that.
yeah.
If it's in the easement to be able to go up to 10 feet, that would give you the flexibility to stay at 8 feet, or if there's a place where you feel that it needs to be wider to pass something.
Or the structure of what seems to be very advantageous right now with the State Park Road siting is a 20-foot easement within a 100-foot buffer that can be placed. So there are there, it seems like there are opportunities to update this, knowing what we've learned in tens of thousands of dollars of scoping studies and trail construction, that we might be able to add language to have a more convenient easement for future trail building.
And maybe even
The
have a copy of
basic-
the
the basic-
Vermont Land Trust easement.
The basic easement doesn't, I think that I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it says 20 feet right away with 10
Yeah.
feet or 8 feet, does it?
Well, it says the 20-foot right-of-way. I don't believe it specifies the width of the trail.
The width
so.
of the trail. So I think that that's something that is determined on each piece. I know that there's, for instance, over Kimball Brook, if we go to 6 feet because of, the wetlands and all of that, we go to 6 feet, and that's the way it is.
But that section where we have 100 feet where we can move the 20-foot trail? That's a nice mechanism to have if a landowner is amenable to it. I
is.
don't know why we wouldn't want to add that from a planning perspective.
Right. I think that, we would be hard pressed to find landowners who would be willing to give, for the most part, that 100-foot easement.
Depends on the size of the land too, whether you're looking at a
It
5-acre lot
might,
or
right.
100 acre.
For these particular, looking at
Pretty
these
far away from their
five,
homesteads.
they are, but they're only 17 acres total.
But there's
of
also,
land.
it's no increased square footage. What I'm seeing structurally here, because we've looked at this through the scoping study, is this is also near wetlands. And if it's a narrow easement, that really limits the planning options of siting the trail. Whereas if it comes back that a wetland permit would prefer to have the trail 12 feet outside that 20-foot easement that we secured in 2018, if we had that 100-foot mechanism, it would be seamless.
Right.
If we didn't, we'd be going back to the new landowner asking for a variance to the easement. It's just, it would seem.
If you look at the first 4 pieces of property though, you can see, is yours in color?
Yeah.
Okay, so the rose or red color there is the wetland area. And then the potential easement is as far away as possible from the wetland area. I mean, it does have to go over Thorpe Brook, there's no question. It has to go over the brook at some point. But what we have been looking for is getting that easement as far away from wetlands as we possibly can. If we had 100-foot right-of-way there, it would just put it down into the wetland. So in these 4, I see what you're saying for other options, but for those 4 in particular, a 20-foot easement at the very back of the property is going to give you the highest land farthest away from the wetlands. So for these, we have been looking at these for a while, and the only other option would be to go on the other side of Thorpe, the west side of Thorpe Brook, but then you get close to houses, and that's.
So on the map I have, and it looks like there too, could you delineate what the different red lines mean?
Yes. So this area, this is Thorpe Brook. And the actual, I guess that's a blue color is more of where there is water, and then the pink area is wetlands. So, so that's the Thorpe Brook, and this looks like a kind of a side wetlands area as well. Where we're looking to get the 20-foot right-of-way is up here, and this, it doesn't have any bars that actually show how much higher up it is, but it is significantly higher up here, the land, than it is down there. It drops off pretty quickly, and likewise, it comes back up pretty quickly on the other side of Thorpe Brook. So it just doesn't seem advantageous in these particular ones anyway to have a 100-foot right-of-way, because it would only bring you down into the wetlands.
And then the scoping study had 3 possible
Right, the other
locations.
option was over here on the other side of the wetlands, going up, and then the third one was up on the road, this is Greenbush Road, so it would be up on the road until we get to Mack Farm. Now, what we did discover is that we do not have an easement across Mack Farm here. We only have the easement here. So this particular one wouldn't work. We'd have to go all the way to the Burns property to go in. And this option here wouldn't really work unless Robert Mack decided he wanted to give another easement. Either way, that he would decide to give another easement. So really the only connection to the easement on Robert Mack's property is to do this right-of-way back here. It also, if you look at the wetlands, it goes over the least amount of wetlands, which is certainly our goal all the time. 20 feet also gives you, I mean, it doesn't give you the 100 feet, but it gives you the opportunity to look at trees, to go around trees.
Well, so only a little, because you have an 8-foot trail and then 8 feet of maintenance 4 on each side. So you have 4 feet of wiggle room to move a trail,
Right.
jog this way, jog that way. It just seems
Right.
like, it seems like a very narrow needle to thread from a planning perspective.
Yeah.
Even if increasing it to 30 feet. Like the other issue I'm kind of wondering about, I don't know enough about the land use regs, but is there any setback for building a road next to a property line?
No, it would only be on a structure, the setback for structures.
So then it would only be the maintenance side of it, as far as mowing. We couldn't mow someone else's property
Right.
Right.
or cut their trees.
Yeah.
That was the other thing that we ran into with the co-housing trail is, you know, a tree that's 15 feet away can have branches growing into the trail. Can the town cut that branch or not? And I think the answer was yes,
If it goes over.
where it crosses the
If it
easement.
goes over the property line or
Right.
crosses onto the easement.
Goes,
Right.
yeah. Right.
So again, requesting 30 feet seems like, is it a big difference to a landowner compared to the doubling the?
So talking about State Park Road, for instance, and looking at that new option that just came up of going around the other, if you remember, going around the other side of the Tavies property.
Which is like option C.
And, option C. So when we started talking to her about a potential 20-foot easement, she gasped. Because what they had before was a 5-foot easement. And then we already had like 12 to 14 feet on the side of the road, which gave us enough for the wiggle room. But, so I think in certain situations, It would be fun. It wouldn't hurt to ask for, 50, 100 feet. Again, I think it depends on the property, where you are, where their house is, what, all those kinds of things.
Especially for these 4 specific ones, I think asking for a area in which to place a 20-foot easement is going to allow the town to not cut down a 100-year-old pin oak that wasn't on this map, but if we could move the trail over 10 feet, because we have that space to do so, that would really save a huge headache in the future. We found on State Park Road, these trees of exceptional value became an issue where we need the Trails Committee and the town require the tree warden to approve a tree getting cut down. If we can avoid that by moving a 20-foot easement over 10 feet, I think it's worth planning that into the language.
Right.
Even if we're not asking for more square footage.
Possibly make a fill in the blank one, so you could actually just decide for each individual,
Yeah, because we don't have the luxury of going and specifically mapping out that trail and seeing these issues before.
Honestly, if you walk back there, there is a trail already. And it's pretty obvious, and it is probably 6 to 8 feet wide if you take down the buckthorn and all the brambles that have gone up on it. And
At the scoping study meeting, I clearly remember people from the Conservation Committee hearing that same observation and relaying that that's wildlife corridor. So, and wanting to be able to have the flexibility to have the trail not overlay directly on wildlife corridor all the time if possible. So again, it's like, to me, another reason to build in flexibility into the easements, as long as it still gets to a yes. If there's.
We can certainly ask for 30 feet. I don't think that.
Not for the easement, just the flexibility to move a 20-foot easement within a certain, to me, that seemed like a really useful tool. And it doesn't change the easement that we'd ultimately be asking for.
Yeah. I would just say that it is different from any other easement that the town has gotten over the last, I don't know, I've only been doing this for 11 years, so, but every other easement on every conservation piece, everywhere says, other than Jonathan Kuchar says 20 feet.
So when
They
was
are all
Jonathan?
20
It was
feet.
actually Clark, he offered it during the subdivision process. So he subdivided the property into 4 building lots and offered that easement, the 100-foot flex easement.
Clark Hinsdale.
Yep.
So he has a lot of experience. It seems like a wise move and a really nice kind of gesture,
that we should try to mirror.
if possible. I don't see why we should plan that out of the
It's
equation.
different in a subdivision setting than it is in an established lot setting. Because if
There's, in this situation, there's no give and take.
But this is someone who seemed receptive to the easement already?
Right, but we have 5 people. There's 5 properties that we want to go across to get into town. And yes, a few of them are very willing, and maybe for those, we could ask for 30 feet. But there are others who are not as willing,
Right.
and so it could potentially be 20 feet.
Right, but it's not a 30-foot easement we're talking about. It's
No.
a 20-foot easement with a 30-foot flexibility.
Yeah.
So it's still only a 20-foot easement,
Right,
but that just in case it has to wind around something.
right, right.
Whereas this red line represents 20 feet off the property line.
That's an approximation right there again, but yes, for the most part, it would be 20 feet off of the back property line going across, pretty much where the current trail exists already.
Who uses that current trail?
I've heard people from co-housing say they do. I've heard people from Wildwood West. Wildwood West has an easement, an open area between 2 lots that goes down into their common land, And if you follow that trail, that comes out into the other trail and goes north. Yeah.
I mean, I would say that this would have to be more accurately mapped
And that's what
For-
the
for-
eas-
for-
that's what
for
the
the
easement
easement.
does.
For
Yes,
the
and
easement.
that's why we would like the legal consultation, because they put in the actual lot, the property, what it, you know, where it is, and all of those things, and exactly where the 20-foot or 30-foot right-of-way would be, and all of that, or the 30-foot easement, sorry, would be.
right, but all that information is gonna have to be given to the lawyer.
Yes.
So that has to be all mapped out by somebody.
Right, and that's the piece that Mike Russell would do, or no?
He could provide a recommendation, and then, you know, I think the description of the corridor is really part of the form. Yeah.
Is part of what?
The form.
The easement.
Yeah.
So sounds good. I mean, it's great. And you said there were 2 possible property owners that you'd be approaching?
So there are 2 that seem to be more agreeable, and we are looking at approaching them first, and then we'll go toward the others. We did send out a letter to one who has their property for sale, and haven't heard anything from them, but, so it could be a long time in the process of getting these easements.
And once the easements are signed by the landowner, that will come to the select board for acceptance. It'll be,
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So when someone's selling a lot that we want an easement on, how would any potential buyer know that? If you have contacted the owner, in terms of legal questions, is that something that the owner is obligated to tell any potential buyer that the
it
town
comes up in a
wants?
title search, so.
It's on the deed.
So,
If it's already given, it's on.
no,
the
if it's
deed.
desired, like lots 1, 2, 3, 4, so somebody wants to buy lot 3, they don't even know that the town wants an easement.
Right, if there's no current easement, nope, they wouldn't know that.
So I guess Vermont's a buyer beware state.
Well, we don't have.
So
any
you don't
rights
have
to
to-
that. We don't have any rights to that until that new owner grants them.
Or the existing owner that's selling the property,
If they do that before the sale.
which is less common, or it's more common the new owner does it?
Well,
when
I don't
these
know that
happen?
either or, but I guess just to answer Fritz's question, how would the new owner know?
They won't.
They
wouldn't know it was in the process, but they would know once it was done.
Right.
So if they did a title search, if it happened to get completed, they did a title search, it would be they would find it in the title search.
Well, the easement will.
The
But I
easement,
meant the desire to obtain an easement.
there's nothing.
They'd have to have come to the scoping study meetings.
Well, no, there's sometimes if a municipality has
A plan.
advised an owner that they're looking for this becomes something that the owner then has to tell any potential buyer, depending on how the real estate laws are written in that state.
I don't know.
And I don't know enough about Vermont, but I've heard
Neither.
it say it's a buyer beware state. If this is in California, indeed, you would have to notify any potential buyer, that the county wants to put a road into here, they want to widen the road, they want to put a trail in. So that's known up front.
But in the end, it's their choice, right? I mean, if somebody buys that property and they don't want a trail,
Or they
then-
don't buy it because they know they want a trail. Or they want to subdivide it and they know, well, they want a trail, so now I've got some ammunition that, I'll give you the trail if you let me subdivide. So it works both ways as to whether a potential buyer knows
Right.
of the desire of that.
Right.
Which may be a question we could ask our council, since we're bringing this issue up. Is there an appropriate or an approved way to get this out there so everybody knows?
When is it required?
Because over the past few years, that one particular lot that is still for sale can be 2 lots, and they've tried to sell it both ways, which is kind of an interesting thing, so, yeah.
Well, can be, and whether it ends up, it's always, always subject to negotiation.
Now, did we talk about the State Park Road being ADA compliant?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Didn't you talk about once you make a trail like that, then all of our trails will have to be, once it's connected, you know, like, will this one be ADA compliant?
So co-housing is ADA compliant. Melissa and Trevor Mack section is ADA compliant. And the plan is for State Park Road to be ADA compliant. Jim
So then
Donovan
this
did
one would
say when we were walking it that we are going to try to kind of zigzag up a little bit. And we have that 100 feet to be able to do that on Kimball Brook on either side. He did say that it might be a little more than 5% grade, but that, he said something, no, I don't know enough about it.
It could be a little more for a
It could be
certain
little more
distance,
for a
but then it's
short-
gotta be a place to rest or a flatter spot.
Right, so it's okay if it's a very short distance, that it's more than a 5% grade.
And will this become, is that the plan for this, to make the whole,
Yeah, and this is relatively flat compared to
Yeah.
State
It
Park
is.
Road.
okay,
Right.
good.
I mean, the only part that isn't is when you go around over Thorpe Brook, but if there's a bridge, which there's gonna have to be, you just make sure that it doesn't go down and up, you know, you make sure it goes a little more straight across, yeah. Yeah.
So Dean, you'll be able to send us the template language
Sure.
at the same time you send it to
Yep.
legal counsel, that'd be great.
Okay. And where appropriate, we will look to get 30 feet versus.
Well, having
20
that
feet.
structure like Kuchar's, where it's still a 20-foot easement, but there's a given distance in which we can locate that 20 feet. I think 50 feet would be great. That way we could move the trail over 20 feet to get around really a tree, ledge, a huge boulder, things that will be expenses on the other side, on the build-out side. If we can pre-plan some flexibility in the siting, I think that would save the town a lot of money in the future.
All right. Yeah, I guess my only thought would be that if it proves to be too difficult to get 50 feet, but they agree to 30 feet or 20 feet, I mean, I think 20 feet would be the minimum, that's all, that's normally what we've been getting, but,
Well, it'd still be a 20-foot easement,
right, that's what I'm saying.
even in a 50-foot
So
area.
we would try for the 50 foot, but
With a-
if
well,
that is.
A 20-foot easement within a 50-foot area.
Right.
It wouldn't be a 50-foot easement, it'd be a, does that make sense?
Yeah, but
Oh,
The town
right,
could
but that they
locate,
would not want it to be flexible that way.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
That would
is that
reduce.
would be where we would start with negotiations, but it could come down to maybe only the 20-foot easement. Depends on the person, I guess. Yeah,
Cool.
okay. So, anything else?
No, It's great, really informative. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see, we're running a little behind. I think select board updates, 8:55 item.
I wished I had seen this while Abby was here. Did you read this yet?
It was on the table.
Yeah, underneath my agendas and
I read
stuff.
it.
Yeah, I'm sorry that, well, but there's some sense to it.
Little bit.
A lot of, you know,
I think
That
Abby
would have
said there
been
were
good
some
for
good points
discussion.
made, good points made in there too.
pardon me?
Abby, I'd sent it to Abby and she said there were some good points in there.
Yes, there are a few good points in there, there's no doubt.
So what was Lane thinking with the employee performance reviews?
I think it's December 4th at, Nicole would like it, if possible, to be at 3:30. And then, Frank, were you, the earliest you can get here is 5, is that right?
Yeah.
So Aaron's would be 5, and Daryl's would be 5:30 or so, and mine would be 6. something like that.
They were gonna do Nicole early.
Well, what's that?
They were gonna do Nicole earlier.
Well, unless you wanted to be there, I thought you weren't
No,
necessarily.
no, no, I'm just saying that you were
Yeah.
gonna do
I think
Nicole
her
earlier,
preference
right?
was 3:30, you
Right,
said?
yeah.
Yeah.
So there would be a little bit of gap, I guess, for people that,
Catch an early dinner?
yes.
Okay, and emergency plumbing work at senior center?
So when they were doing the countertops, they had opened them up, and the countertop guy was here, and they were about to install them, and they found there was a plumbing problem. So they hired a plumber to come fix it, Mike Cusino, and, it took him about a day. They rent the space over there, and there was a rental scheduled for the next day. And then Thanksgiving dinner was during the week after, the following week. So there was a bit of a crunch time, so they hired Mike Cusino, he did the work. The bill ended up to be $1,700, which is more than, our purchasing policy says to get 3 quotes for work over $1,000. So they didn't get 3 quotes, but there is a provision in the purchasing policy that it's in section 5A that allows emergency purchases. It says the select board may award or authorize contracts or make purchases for the purpose of meeting a public emergency without complying with the bid process. Emergency expenditures may include immediate repair of or maintenance to town property, equipment, or infrastructure if the delay in such repair or maintenance would endanger persons or property or result in substantial impairment of the delivery of important town services. So it's really in your judgment whether that would have, I guess whether it was a violation of the purchasing policy or whether it complied with the purchasing policy in terms of being an emergency.
Have you reviewed the
Considering
invoice?
the select board is notified about it now, it can't be much of an emergency. Who'd they try to call?
Who did, I mean,
I
at
don't
the
even
time?
know what the scope of work was that they did.
That's what I was gonna say.
Was it an
Have you
emergency
reviewed the
because they
invoice?
tore the cupboards up and they wouldn't get it finished in time for a party? Or was it an emergency because it was imminent failure to the damage to the health of people? I don't even know what they did.
No, I mean, was stuff broken when they went to take it apart and put in a new one? And that caused the issue. We don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't know really the specifics. Gary Pittman is the person that was kind of in charge of the project. I don't know, maybe Lane knows a little bit about it, I'm not sure. I knew that there was a plumbing issue that they couldn't, that they needed to address in order to install the countertops, and there was a schedule kind of crunch in terms of the schedule for renting the facility and then for getting Thanksgiving meal, delivered or functioned.
So
what's the question? They're just telling us there was one? Or they're
My
or
guess
is this-
question is, we do have an invoice for $1,700 and change.
does it break out materials versus labor?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
It would say what it's for.
And what was repaired?
Um,
I haven't seen it. This might be something I see on the next select board meeting. We have 10 minutes for select board updates at 7:05. We could maybe
Okay.
invite Garrett over and give people time to look at the invoice.
Okay, I sent it out.
And we could have select board updates put down with the minutes around 8:50.
A description of what was done.
It'll also just give us the opportunity to
See the invoice.
talk about what we want to see
Okay.
next time.
Okay.
With the senior center.
Okay.
Or without any town.
Somebody says, oh, it's an emergency bill, here, pay it. Wait a minute.
Who's signing?
Wait a minute. Yeah. Sign it and read it later. Where did I hear that before?
Okay, I also had a thought.
Ah,
Last week I was like, How come we don't do a 5-year plan with a spreadsheet, a 5-year, 10-year projection of town stuff? And so I thought maybe, I don't know, like when I came in today, I said, is this a silly question or is this silly thought, whatever? And then I found out that we had been using a capital budget and program for a long time. It stopped maybe in 2001. But for a lot of years, there's been a capital program so that we could, because I was thinking about that, well, how do we know when this bond and this bond, like and so a 5-year projection plan seemed to me like it was.
Is this what was required? We had to have a capital plan in order to potentially charge.
Impact fees? Impact fees?
The what?
Impact fee, is that what we're gonna say?
In what?
Or, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think what they call it, when like you want to take, when somebody gets a permit, you want to have an extra $1,000 to put into a fund.
Impact fee.
Impact fee, yes. May have been created because there was a desire to collect impact fees that we don't collect, so this has become a moot point. I don't know.
This is a program that does a 5-year projection. Yes? Is a method of organizing the capital needs of Charlotte into a plan for meeting those needs, like over a 6-year plan, it says, 6-year period. It just helps you to.
Impact fees are things like if you want to have what's the one we have approved for, recreation impact
we
fee?
did have a recreation, yeah, but we don't anymore.
So you collect taxes when people subdivide or stuff, impact fees, and in order to be legally to be able to collect those, you have to have a definition. You have to have what you want to spend the money on.
Well, this is like a roof or computers or, you know.
I don't know, I haven't read that, I don't know why it was created. Be interesting to see
So
if
that you could look over, don't most businesses, bigger businesses have like a 5-year, 10-year projection of
some do.
Cost of things?
This could have been, depending on what's in it, it could have been for all of town assets, or it could have just been designed so they could collect impact fees.
No, not impact fees.
Yeah, back at some point in the 2000s, I asked Jeff McDonald, because actually I think statute designates the planning commission to initiate a capital budget. And he said, the town doesn't have a lot of capital assets. We don't have the road, the road commissioners' assets are the road commissioners. They're not the towns. Fire departments are the fire departments. So the town doesn't have a lot of capital assets. It does have buildings. It does, I guess the computer server would probably be considered a capital asset. I don't know about the small workstations, but.
So you have the town hall.
Bonds.
The beach.
Have bonds,
Right.
eventually the beach. Yeah.
Well, this is including the central school and projected additions and the cost to the town for that versus the district today. But it also does have a proposed impact fee schedule.
That's probably why they wrote it up, so they could collect impact fees.
Oh, there you go. You want to do that anyways, don't you?
It's interesting. I'd love to look at this more. Is this something Mary has?
Yeah.
This is in her files?
It just gave it to me today when I was
the date on it?
questioning. 98 was the
It was
last.
printed in 96, and it's for the years 1997 through 02.
Be interesting to know if that corresponded with our impact, our ability to collect impact fees for that time period.
I'd like to see how accurate it was to the actual budgets of those 5 years that they
Well, if it's for impact fees, it's going to be designed to meet a certain endpoint anyway, whether it's accurate or not.
Oh, I didn't know. Maybe it would be
We want to.
helpful for some kind of budgeting.
But it would be a bad idea, because I mean, I've said we're gonna need a new roof here. I mean,
Right.
like the
Right.
fire department stretches their equipment out. Things we have to worry about are the town hall and the beach, and they're talking about doing a plan on a piece of paper for improvements that could easily morph into improvements plus maintenance.
There you go, perfect, absolutely.
So we'd be left as a select board worrying about town hall.
Operating with, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it's not a, you
No,
know,
but you're right. I mean,
large,
you
but
should plan, like I said, the roof. I should know that
Right.
20 years we're gonna need a roof. And while we're coming on year 20, where's the money? Should be written down somewhere.
Or a surprise to a changing composition of select board members. They could have a
Yeah.
current document. Because theoretically, within 5 years, every seat is up for a reelection within that time frame.
What about if there's a parking lot planned or,
Yeah,
you
parking
know,
spaces.
parking spaces, and you got ongoing maintenance of
Get
different
them to
things.
charge impact fees to pay for our parking.
Okay, I was just really glad that there was actually a document already available when I asked what I thought was, I wasn't sure if the question was good or not.
Thank you. Minutes, we'll move to the next meeting.
Yep.
9:05, approve warrants to pay bills.
Oh,
People can do that before
We're late.
we adjourn. I apologize.
Sorry. They're not out here. We're not signing them.
I already signed them.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.